Roman slave owner. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151, Fake Defeat. I think it's very likely true, Domitius said. When old Metellus attacked Era, he only carried 10 days' worth of food and water. Livy may have copied his approach. He started to return 5 days later, which just proves this point. The Jugurthine War of that year had a profound impact on Rome. When Rome was defeated at first, some people even thought it would be another Punic War. Fortunately, Marius and Sulla emerged as a new force and defeated Jugurtha, the king of Numidia. As a Roman general, he had studied this war very deeply. So they are really going to run out of water. Iabas smiled and said, "Do you think we should attack or continue to wait?" "Of course we should attack. Such a good opportunity must not be missed. I think we should let all the cavalry attack, delay their way back, and then choose a place to fight a decisive battle with them," Domitius said decisively. Iabas nodded. In fact, he thought so too. Not long after, a large number of cavalry swarmed out of the city and ran deep into the Gobi Desert. Levi finally felt the pressure of the enemy cavalry, who harassed them day and night without regard for their lives. The cavalry of both sides had several large-scale battles. If Levi's cavalry had not been supported by infantry, they would have been defeated by the enemy cavalry long ago. "Have you found out the enemy's spies?" Levi asked. "We have found out. During this period, we have been constantly adjusting the position of the water trucks, and we disclosed it to different people. Finally, we found that there were problems with 2 groups of people who defected to us," a centurion said. "Which 2 bastards are they?" Levi asked. "It's Bomilca and Nasarca," the centurion said. "So it's these 2 bastards," Levi said angrily. He forgave Bomilca, but he didn't expect that he was an ungrateful person. "Do you want to arrest them?" the centurion asked. Levi thought about it, and finally shook his head. "No, I want to pass some information to the enemy through them." Levi shook his head. Maybe he would have to cooperate with them in a play. A cavalryman rushed towards the army frantically. "Quick, there are enemy cavalry attacking. There are at least 2,000 of them." Hearing this, a military tribune cursed inwardly. The cavalry had missed another person, but it was just right for him to complete Levi's order. He quickly issued orders, asking some soldiers to take out crossbows and arrows from the carriages, and then the army continued to move forward as if nothing had happened. This kind of thing had happened many times along the way. They had long been able to deal with it skillfully. The army was advancing in a completely combat formation, but the water truck was placed in the middle of the team, so there was no need to adjust the formation at all. Not long after, they saw a large number of Numidian cavalry. They were like a pack of wolves, chasing Levi's army in this desolate Gobi. The Numidian cavalry's war horse was a very short native war horse. These war horses had no saddles. The Numidian cavalry rode on horseback, holding 2 or 3 javelins and a light spear, and at most a shield. With these simple equipment, the Numidian cavalry made a name for themselves in the Mediterranean world, and even the Romans praised them highly. They did not speed up immediately, but controlled the horses to approach the Roman army at a relatively slow pace. Before charging, they had to save every bit of horsepower. Seeing this, the army finally stopped and prepared to meet these cavalry. What they didn't know was that at this time, a military tribune was saying something to his soldiers that was enough to make them collapse. "Remember, our mission this time is to let them destroy the water. Be gentle when you do it later." The standard of 3-stage shooting is reduced from 3 arrows per person per minute to 2 arrows. Each time you shoot, you can only shoot 1 row. When I say retreat, you must retreat. Whether you retreat to the back of the carriage or find other shelters, you must let them destroy the water truck. The military tribune said that he actually wanted them to retreat to the back of the carriage, but thinking that this might allow the enemy to find a flaw, it would be more realistic to let them retreat freely. The soldiers looked at each other. "What does this mean? Are you asking us to fake defeat?" someone asked. "Yes, this is the general's order," the military tribune said. It turned out to be a fake defeat. Was the general thinking of some trickery? The soldiers thought. Remember, this matter must be kept secret. Anyone who dares to disclose it will be sentenced to death immediately." The military tribune threatened. The soldiers nodded quickly to show that they understood. At this time, the Numidian cavalry had already started to charge. They were wearing shorts and tunics, making strange roars, and then rushed towards the army. A sharp copper whistle sounded, and the soldiers standing in the first row immediately shot, and a large number of arrows flew forward at a speed that was difficult to see with the naked eye. Puff, puff, dot. Although the distance was a bit far, their target was the warhorse, so some arrows still hit the target. At this time, they began to retreat, and the soldiers in the second row came forward, raised their crossbows and aimed at the target. Some horses wailed and fell to the ground after being hit. The cavalrymen on the horses fell directly to the ground and rolled on the ground for who knows how many times before they stopped. Some of their bodies were strangely twisted, and they looked like they had broken bones. They could only lie on the ground and wail helplessly. But more horses were not hit. The Numidian cavalrymen kept their bodies tightly on the horse's back and continued to rush forward. Another whistle sounded, and a round of arrows rained down again. Some of the Numidian cavalrymen fell down again. At this time, they were less than 100 meters away from the army. Round after round of arrows rained down. The closer to the formation, the higher the hit power of the crossbows and the stronger the penetration. A large number of cavalrymen fell on the way to charge. The cavalrymen behind them either jumped over or stepped on the fallen horses and soldiers. The scene was extremely bloody, but they finally rushed within 40 meters. The huge casualties made some cavalrymen impatient and tried to use the high speed of the horses to throw javelins. Some of those javelins did not hit the target, but a few hit the soldiers. Seeing this, some centurions were not calm, but in order to achieve their goal, they still ordered the soldiers to continue shooting. As the distance got closer, the crossbow's hit rate was surprisingly high. Once it hit the warhorse, the whole thing would be immersed in the warhorse, which caused terrible damage to the cavalry. But the military tribune who commanded them knew that they had to retreat. When a horn sounded, the soldiers immediately scattered and fled. Many of them fled behind the carriage, using the cover of the carriage to avoid the opponent's javelin. Seeing this, the cavalry could not help but be overjoyed. Thank you very much for the reward from Crazy Beijing Girl. Chapter 152, Capture. They rushed forward, using javelins and spears to destroy the water carts, and poked holes in the wooden barrels of the water carts. Some used swords to chop at the barrels, making cracks in them. A large amount of clean water flowed out of the barrels, which made the soldiers feel distressed. With the cover of the carriages, they continued to shoot at the cavalry. The cavalry could not bear the huge casualties and began to flee. The military tribune said hurriedly, "Hurry up and block the gap, check the clean water again, and continue to drink it if you can drink it. Don't waste it." Some soldiers angrily walked towards the Numidian cavalry who had lost their horses. It was these people who caused a lot of casualties to them. They took out their daggers and killed them. After hearing the news, Levi praised, "Well done." It's time to tell them the news. On the desolate Gobi Desert, Bamilcar and his soldiers returned to the team exhausted. After a day of fighting, many of them were covered with scars. Fortunately, the medical soldiers of the medical camp were very capable and quickly carried the wounded down and treated their wounds. But when they saw the fresh water allocated to them, their anger immediately broke out. "Why is there only this little water? We have been fighting for a whole day. Can't we even drink a little water?" A cavalryman pointed to the small spoon of fresh water and said, "You should be content. Today we encountered an attack by the enemy cavalry, and many water trucks were destroyed. Some legions have stopped supplying water. At least you still have some water." A Roman soldier said, "What did you say? Stop the water supply?" Bamilcar said in shock, "Yes, our losses today are very heavy, and many water trucks have been destroyed. Those damn Numidian cavalry will kill them sooner or later," the Roman soldier said angrily. Bamilcar was surprised and happy, but on the surface he agreed. "You are right, we will win this victory sooner or later." The soldier left quickly, and Bamilcar suppressed the smile on his face. When arranging the sentry today, he could just send this message out. The Roman army stipulated that each sentry would arrange people to keep watch, not only infantry but also cavalry. The ratio was 4 infantry and 4 cavalry for each century, divided into 4 shifts, and each shift kept watch for no more than 3 hours. The cavalry kept watch outside the camp to prevent the enemy from launching an attack. Not surprisingly, due to the tense war, only 12 of his men were selected to keep watch. The cavalry century was composed of 30 people, and when Ba-Milca's men were fully staffed, they had more than 6 centuries of cavalry. Ba-Milca whispered to several cavalrymen for a while, and soon they disappeared into the vast night. The lights were on in Livy's tent, and Livy called all officers above the military tribune and the chief centurion over. "Tomorrow is the last day for us to leave the Gobi Desert. If nothing unexpected happens, the enemy will launch a decisive battle against us on this day." Levi said, "Our cavalry has learned that the main force of the enemy has appeared less than 7 miles away from us." "That's good. It's suffocating to retreat all day," Gata said. "My plan is this. The 2nd Legion will fight against the enemy's elephant cavalry. The specific combat method is this. Levi is not a commander who likes to conceal things. Unlike Hannibal always tells you what to do, and you don't need to know why you do it. Levi will tell these people his requirements in detail and ask for their opinions. When there are no questions, the meeting will be adjourned today." As soon as Levi got up the next morning, he received news from the soldiers that the enemy army appeared 3 miles outside the camp and was slowly advancing towards this side. "What a cunning group of guys. Half of them guard the wall and the other half eat." Then they wrote it. "I want to see if they dare to attack my camp," Levi said disdainfully. "It's impossible to let them fight on an empty stomach." As for whether they could capture this camp, Livius thought that the possibility was 0. Numidian infantry had always been extremely bad. If he could capture this camp, Livius's 2 names would be written backwards. Every time Levi set up camp, he would dig trenches, build earth walls, and take all kinds of defensive measures. As expected by Livius, Iabas knew that his strength was cavalry, so he had no intention of attacking. He quietly waited for them to go to battle outside the camp. Of course, it was no problem if they did not go to battle. He knew that Levi and his men had run out of water, and it would be more beneficial for them not to go to battle. Just as those soldiers were cooking, Ba-Milca suddenly found that they were boiling a lot of water. He knew that this was the rule of Roman soldiers, and they had to drink boiled water. Ba-Milca asked in confusion, "Don't you have no water? How do you have so much water?" "I'm not sure about this, but it said above that you can drink as much water as you want this time." "I'm afraid you will wet your pants when you drink too much during the battle," the soldier said. Ba-Milca suddenly had a bad feeling. What was going on? Seeing so much fresh water, many soldiers gathered around and wanted to drink it, but they were stopped by their superiors. Levi's requirement to drink boiled water was very strict. Ba-Milca's face was full of gloom. Did he fall for it? At this time, a centurion came over with several soldiers. "Is it Ba-Milca?" The general summoned all the generals to hold a military meeting. "Okay, I'll go right away," Ba-Milca said. The general ordered that you must go immediately after receiving the order. The centurion said very toughly. "Can't you wait for a while?" "I'm a little anxious," Ba-Milca said. "Are you going to disobey the military order?" The centurion directly drew out his dagger. Seeing this, Ba-Milca felt even more uneasy. He looked around and wondered if he should kill out now, but there were Roman soldiers all around, and the camp gates were closed, so it was impossible to kill out. According to the general's order, "Come with me." A soldier directly put the dagger on his neck and shouted. The other soldiers surrounded him and drew their daggers. The changes here attracted the attention of many people, and the soldiers looked over here. Ba-Milca was terrified. He knew he was exposed, otherwise they would not be so tough. A lot of cold sweat kept flowing down his forehead. "Matho, what are you doing?" At this time, a centurion said. He recognized that this was Matho, the centurion of the royal guard. According to the general's order, "Arrest the spy Ba-Milca." The centurion directly took out the number plate given to him by Levi. Chapter 153, Breaking the Elephant Formation. "Spy? He is a spy? How is this possible?" Hearing this, Ba-Milca collapsed to the ground. "It's over, it's completely over." The soldiers stopped talking nonsense with him and dragged him to the general's tent. As soon as he entered the general's tent, he found that hundreds of eyes were looking at him. Some of them were gloating, some were angry and hostile. In addition, there was a black man kneeling on the ground and swore to the sky, "Great General Levi, are you mistaken? I swear I am not a spy of the enemy." A centurion sneered, "The day before yesterday, we mixed the water truck into the convoy of the 2nd Legion. Only you know this news. Why did the enemy know the location of the water truck so quickly?" The big man's face changed drastically, but he quickly said, "It's unfair. I really don't know the location of the water truck." "I don't know. Who do you think sent the centurion who drank with you the day before yesterday?" The centurion sneered. Hearing this, Pamilkas suddenly understood that the military tribune deliberately told him the news. Levi glanced at them coldly. "Everyone, the 2 spies have been found. It's time to tell the truth. In fact, we have never lacked water. We have plenty of water. The reason why we say we lack water is to find the spies and to fight the enemy here." Hearing this, the military tribunes and the tribal chiefs who surrendered were excited. This proved that everything was under Levi's control, and they were likely to win this war. "Pass my order and take them all away. I have prepared 2 crosses for them," Levi said. "No, help," the black man and Pamilka wailed. "Today, let the spies watch how we win the war on the cross." Levi slammed the table and said, "We will win, we will win, we will win." The generals roared. The wailing soon spread throughout the camp. When the soldiers knew the reason, the angry soldiers punched and kicked them. If it weren't for the guard's stop, they would have been beaten to death. Not long after, all the soldiers under their command were killed. The internal hidden dangers were eliminated. Levi could finally free his hands to deal with the enemy. The camp gate opened, and a large number of soldiers swarmed out and formed a battle array according to Levi's instructions. Levi arranged a completely unconventional military battle. He split the 3rd Legion into 2 halves and placed them on the 2 wings of the large formation, facing the enemy's elephant formations on the 2 wings. The middle was full of infantry, and the cavalry was deployed in the rear. Seeing this, Iabas couldn't help laughing. "Dmigius, you were defeated by such a person." Dmigius was also stunned. How could Levi arrange such a large formation? You must know that Iabas deployed 100 war elephants on the 2 wings, and the cavalry and infantry were deployed in the middle. How could Levi's thin infantry formation be a match for the war elephants? Even if the cavalry was added, it would be impossible to win. Once the war elephants defeated the infantry on the 2 wings, they would break through the middle frantically, and the entire Roman army would collapse. "Today, let's see how I defeat the Roman legion," Iabas said confidently. "I think you should be more careful. You see, they have deployed some crossbows on both wings." Dmigius said, "You are right. I can't give them more time." Iabas nodded and said, "Pass my order. The whole army attacks." As Iabas' order was issued, the army that stretched for several kilometers began to slowly advance. Seeing this, Levi knew that he could not hesitate any longer. "Pass my order. The whole army attacks," Levi said. For a large-scale battle like this involving more than 100,000 people, the outcome is basically determined before the battle formation is deployed. Because this battle line is too wide, stretching for several kilometers, and there is no end in sight, the commander only gave the order, and it took an unknown amount of time for the order to be passed to the commander on the front line. Levi has done everything he can, and now he can only do his best and leave it to fate. The battlefield was filled with the sound of exciting trumpets, and the entire Roman legion and the allied forces also began to slowly advance. At this time, some strange sounds suddenly sounded on the battlefield, and a large number of gongs and drums and gongs came from the 2 wings of the Roman legion. More than 2,000 waist drums and gongs were struck at the same time, and the sound was so loud that it could be heard clearly even in the center of the formation several kilometers away. "What are they doing?" Iabas said in confusion. Dmigius was also confused. What did Levi mean by this? At this time, the war elephants that started charging slowly stopped. Elephants are highly intelligent creatures, but their high intelligence brings a strong sense of vigilance. The huge noise in front made them feel very uneasy, and finally they stopped completely. No matter how the elephant trainers played, they stopped moving forward. At this time, hundreds of cavalry rushed out from both wings of the Roman legion. They were wearing simple leather armor and holding a javelin in their hands. Just like Don Quixote, They rushed towards the huge war elephants. They rushed to the side of the elephants and struggled to throw javelins at the elephants. These javelins were specially made iron spearheads, with blood grooves like the three-pointed armor-piercing arrows. The elephants were too big a target, and almost all of them stopped at this time. Many cavalrymen thrust their javelins into the elephants. The riders on the elephants fought back desperately, but the war horses were very fast and the targets were small, so only a few could hit the targets. After being stabbed by javelins, the elephants became furious. They rushed towards the cavalrymen, trying to take revenge. The cavalrymen lured them to run away. Some of the brave ones even took them to the rear of the enemy formation. Watching the elephants leave one after another, the cavalrymen next to the elephants were stunned. The most powerful elephant formation was just gone. "It's done," Levi said excitedly. He prepared a lot for the elephant formation, including the crossbows behind, but he didn't expect it to be so easy to break the enemy's war elephants. He silently thanked Caesar. This was the solution Caesar came up with. As long as the war elephants were gone, they had already won half of the battle. At this time, the Third Legion had put down the waist drums and gongs, then took over the shields from their companions, picked up the daggers and moved forward. Because the battlefield was so vast, Iabas didn't even notice the abnormality on the two wings. Fortunately, the cavalry commanders were not idiots and quickly assigned some cavalry to block the attack of the Third Legion. "Should we send the cavalry to attack?" Plautus asked at this time. Levi shook his head. "It's not the time yet." Chapter 154, Great Victory. Since the enemy's reserve did not move, his reserve could not move either. A large number of crossbowmen and slingers crossed the army formation and walked to the front of the formation. They lined up in 6 rows, with the first 2 rows squatting and the second row standing and aiming forward. "It's bad," Dumagus said. "What's wrong?" Iabas asked. "Before, the enemy's crossbowmen only shot 1 row at a time, but now 2 rows are shooting at the same time." "Could it be that we were tricked before?" Dumagus said. Iabas thought about it and his face changed drastically. At this time, a cavalryman ran over at full speed. "It's bad. Our elephant soldiers have all run away." "What did you say?" Iabas said in shock. "The enemy scared our elephants with the sound of gongs and drums, and then used cavalry to attack the elephants and led all the elephants away," the cavalryman said. Hearing this, Iabas and Dumagus both changed their faces. "It's bad. We have been tricked. Levi wants to lead us to fight him in the wild," Dumagus said. How is this possible?" Iabas still looked incredulous. "Didn't they run out of water?" "Oh no, they were fooled." Iabas finally woke up. "That damn bastard." At this moment, the 2 armies finally came into contact. "Shoot," Aeneas said loudly. The soldiers in the front row of the brigade he commanded pulled the trigger, and the rain of arrows flew towards the enemy's position like locusts. Then they fell on the enemy. Some arrows shot at the soldiers in the front row, and some flew over their heads and fell on the soldiers in the back. Numidia had just entered the agricultural society, with low productivity, and it was impossible for everyone to wear armor. This round of arrow rain caused huge casualties to them, especially those cavalry, because they didn't have stirrups. They didn't dare to directly attack the dense phalanx, because the consequence of that was that they would fall off the horse, and what they did was to rush to 30 or 40 meters to throw javelins. But in the process, they had to face 2 rows of arrow rain every 6 seconds, which was almost a luxury. The 3rd and 4th legions reenacted the scene of the Han army against the Xiongnu cavalry. The Numidian cavalry could not get close to them. Their rain of arrows was stronger and even denser than that of the Han army. Row after row of cavalry charged the infantry and finally fell on the way. At this time, the Numidian infantry performed better than the cavalry. At least the soldiers in the front row had shields, even if these shields completely blocked their bodies. When the infantry entered 80 meters, the archers behind the crossbowmen raised their bows and arrows and began to throw arrows at the enemy. The dense rain of arrows fell on the Numidian team, making the soldiers scream. Dumagus looked at all this in disbelief. When did the Roman army become so strong that it completely suppressed the Numidian infantry and cavalry, which far outnumbered itself? How is this possible? Iabas was a little dumbfounded. The scene of a huge victory over the Roman legion in his mind did not appear. Instead, The Romans defeated the Numidian cavalry, and even the infantry looked very bad. What should we do? Iabas asked. Domitius frowned. Due to a suggestion, Iabas also prepared a reserve, but the enemy's huge cavalry did not move. Should the reserve be sent to the battlefield now? No, this must not be done. Once this happens, they will be defeated. We must be patient, Domitius said, after at least several rounds of arrow rain. It is unknown how many soldiers fell. The Numidian infantry finally rushed to 30 yards in front of the crossbowmen. Just when they were about to throw javelins happily, the crossbowmen and archers all retreated, revealing the Rhodian slingers behind them. The slingers waved the stones on the slings, just turned around, and then the stones whistled towards the Numidian infantry. Bang, bang, dot. The stones hit the infantry, smashing some soldiers' heads and bleeding. Some soldiers threw their javelins angrily, but the slingers had already started to retreat, retreating to the rear of the formation, and only a few slingers were hit. At this time, the Roman soldiers in the first row were ready, and they threw lead balls at the enemy. The lead balls hit the soldiers, and some of them were directly hit so that their brains burst. A large number of javelins flew up from the back and were thrown at the soldiers. The Numidian infantry screamed again. Attack, said a military tribune. The Roman soldiers standing in the front row marched in neat steps, rushed towards the enemy, and then fought with the enemy. Since there were very few Numidian soldiers wearing armor, the two sides immediately distinguished their strengths and weaknesses. The weapons of the Numidian soldiers did nothing to the Roman soldiers, but the Roman soldiers poked a hole. In particular, the first legion equipped with steel swords was like a tiger coming down a mountain, rushing through the enemy army and killing the Numidian infantry. Domitius and Iabas were dumbfounded. How could this happen? It would be fine if the cavalry was defeated, but how come the infantry was also defeated? And the defeat was not ordinary fast, and soon there was a trend of collapse. Quick, let the reserve troops come up and block there for me. Iabas pointed to the direction of the attack of the first legion and roared loudly. Domitius shook his head. What's the use of this? In the end, they will still fail. The gap in combat effectiveness between the two sides is too big. Instead of letting them fight, it is better to let them cover the escape. Seeing that the enemy army put their reserve troops into the battle, Levi finally put his mind at ease. This battle is won. Notify the cavalry to bypass them and not participate in the battle. Capture Iabas and Domitius alive for me, the two messengers beside Levi said. The two messengers took Levi's number plate, rode on their horses and galloped in the direction of the cavalry. Blow the horn and order the troops on both wings to attack the center, Levi said to the bugler next to him. At this time, the cavalry had been beaten to collapse by the troops on both wings and began to flee. The buglers immediately blew their warped bugles, and the loud bugles resounded throughout the battlefield. The flags were waving, and the flags representing the two wings pointed to the center at the same time. Attack the center, Bulus said loudly. The two wings of the army began to attack the center at the same time. Under the attack of the two wings of the Roman army, the Numidian infantry collapsed faster. This is impossible, Iabas said in disbelief. How could he lose? He has many more soldiers than the Romans. The cavalry is stronger than the Romans. They also have powerful elephant cavalry. Domitius shook his head, and at this time his eyes fixed, and he found the dust in the distance. They want to outflank their rear. Chapter 155 Captured. No, run. The enemy cavalry is coming. Without saying a word, Domitius rode on his war horse and rode away. Iabas soon noticed the dust rising in the distance, and he felt dizzy. It's over. It's completely over. With the help of his guards, Iabas fled to the distance, and Livy's cavalry chased him closely. At this time, the Numidian soldiers also found that Iabas had escaped, and their formation almost collapsed instantly. The Roman soldiers began to chase him. The battle lasted from morning to dusk, and countless enemies were killed and prisoners were captured. Many people stopped chasing until they had no strength left. Livy ordered people to count the results of the battle. In this battle, countless enemies were killed and the amount of spoils was difficult to calculate. When it was dark, there was a sudden noise in the camp. What happened? Livy asked. Iabas and Domitius were caught. A personal soldier rushed in and said excitedly. Who caught them? Livy asked. Hepsr, said the personal soldier. That's great, Levi said. As long as they were caught, this trip would be complete, and Levi could return to Rome. Although he had only been away from Capua for a month, he already missed the people there. Not long after, Hepzur came over with an excited look on his face, and several soldiers behind him came in with Dumagus and Diabas, who were tied up. At this time, their faces were full of misery, and they didn't understand their miserable end. Hepzur smiled and said, "I caught them, I caught them." "Congratulations, Hepzur. You have made a great contribution," Levi said with a smile. Hepzur couldn't hide his smile. He knew that as long as Levi nodded, he would be the king of Numidia. "How did you catch them?" Levi asked curiously. "I placed people around Diabas and caught up with them through the marks they left," Hepzur said. Levi suddenly realized that it was no wonder that Hepzur caught them. This advantage was really unmatched by others. Then, Hepzur looked at Levi eagerly. Levi knew what he wanted. He thought for a moment and said, "Among all the Numidians, you have more soldiers, and you have also captured Diabas and Domitius. You have proved that you are a friend of the Romans, so congratulations. I will nominate you to Rome as the new king of Numidia." Hearing this, Hepzur could no longer suppress his excitement. Diabas, on the other hand, had a look of dejection on his face. His era was completely over. Hepzur hugged Levi tightly and said, "Thank you, General Levi. I am willing to establish a close protective relationship with you like Massinissa and Scipio." Hearing this, Levi was surprised and happy. If this thing succeeded, he would have a country as a backup and could obtain endless Numidian cavalry. "Don't worry, I will do my best to persuade the dictator Sulla to agree that you become the king of Numidia," Levi said to him. He knew that it was time for him to contribute, and he could not just enjoy the benefits without doing his duty. "That's great," Hepzur said with a smile. The Battle of Tara completely shook the entire Africa and Numidia. Levi defeated the Numidian army, which was nearly twice his own strength, with 6 legions, including 15,000 cavalry and 100 war elephants. With this battle, he became the god of war in Africa. Don't think that Numidia's combat effectiveness is very low. The Romans fought very hard in the Jugurthine War. When the Romans were defeated at first, they thought it was another Punic War. Fortunately, Marius and Sulla emerged and quickly ended the war, and now Levi's record even surpassed them. Those tribes that opposed Rome surrendered in fear. Levi did not make it difficult for them, but asked them to pay a large amount of ransom. Some tribes that insisted on resisting were all sold as slaves. Levi made a lot of money, but most of the money was used by him to distribute to soldiers. Levi only got a small part of it, but even this small part was a very large number. Hepzur also accepted the loyalty of many tribes. He even did not need Roman soldiers to recover other territories in Numidia. So Livius began his happy life of paddling. He sent other legions to help Hepzur. He only took his guards to hunt lions and elephants, preparing to take them as trophies for the triumphal ceremony. The sun set, adding a golden glow to the withered prairie. Wuffa leaned against a big tree, drinking wine and enjoying the beauty of the sunset. There was never such a view in his hometown. The winter there was extremely cold, not as warm as here. At this time, a soldier ran over. "Wuffa, the general has something to find you." "Do you know what it is?" Wuffa asked. "Not sure." Wuffa stood up helplessly and followed the soldier into the village. This is a Numidian settlement with a population of thousands. The reason why Levi came here was to capture the lion on a prairie. In the village, there were only Roman soldiers and black civilians. Seeing the tall and strong Wuffa, they made way in fear, following him to a hut. Wuffa did not find Levi. A strange centurion and several soldiers were looking at him coldly. "Where is the general?" Wuffa asked doubtfully. "Wuffa, the general asked me to ask you if he has done anything wrong to you," the centurion said. Wuffa glanced at him and said, "No." "Then why did you betray the general?" the centurion said. Wuffa's heart was shocked. Did his affairs be exposed? But he said without changing his expression, "I don't understand what you mean. Why do you want to find out the secret of the steel sword?" The centurion sneered and said that he would not cry until he saw the coffin. Wuffa's face changed drastically. It was bad. At this moment, the soldiers behind him threw out the fishing net and caught him. Wuffa was about to struggle hard, and at this moment, a large number of soldiers rushed in from the door, all pointing their spears at him. "You'd better not move," The centurion said. He knew that Wu Fa was very brave, so he was well prepared. Wu Fa thought about it, and finally did not fight back. This was a military camp, and no matter how strong he was no match for so many people. The soldiers came forward and tied him up. Wu Fa's brain raced, thinking about how to get out, and he still said very firmly, "You are too much. I want to see the general." If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156 Rescued. Bang! The centurion kicked him in the chest, causing Wu Fa to bend over in pain. "You are a spy, but you don't deserve to see the general," the centurion said viciously. "Tell me the truth. Do you have any accomplices who asked you to steal the manufacturing method of our weapons?" "No, you wronged me," Wu Fa said angrily. He knew that he could not admit it no matter what. Once he admitted it, he would only die. "Since you don't want to confess, don't blame us for being rude." After that, several soldiers came up and punched and kicked him. "I am wronged. You can't do this to me. I want to see the general," Wu Fa said while protecting his important parts. "To be honest, you will die today whether you confess or not. You can die more easily if you confess." "You choose it yourself," said the centurion. Wu Fa's heart sank to the bottom. It seemed that these people had confirmed his identity. After a round of punching and kicking, Wu Fa refused to confess no matter what. The centurion was not in a hurry. He looked at Wu Fa, who was bruised and swollen, and said, "You are tough, right? I like tough people the most. Let's have some fun in the next few days. Take him to the interrogation room. I want to punish him severely." The soldiers took him away from here, and the centurion reported the situation to Levi. "What's going on? Why do you treat Wu Fa like this?" After walking a few steps, he ran into Zaphros and his group. Seeing Wu Fa's appearance, Zaphros asked hurriedly, "He is a spy. We arrested him on the order of the general." A soldier said, "This is impossible. Wu Fa has made great contributions to Rome. How could he be a spy?" "Did you make a mistake?" Zaphros said angrily. "He and Wu Fa are best friends. Wu Fa even saved his life. Of course, he didn't want Wu Fa to become like this." The other soldiers were also very dissatisfied. Wu Fa was their idol. How could he be a spy? "I am wronged." At this time, Wu Fa said angrily, "Did you see that? He said he was innocent." Zaphros said. The soldier couldn't help but roll his eyes. How many spies didn't say they were innocent? "If you have any questions, please ask the general. Don't stop us from performing our duties," the soldier said. "Wait, I'll ask." "If you dare to abuse her, I guarantee you won't have a good end," Zaphros said, and then walked towards Levi's tent. After listening to the centurion's report, Levi thought about it. "Interrogate him for 3 days. If he doesn't confess, he will be executed directly," Levi said. "Yes, General." Not long after the centurion left, a guard informed Zaphros that he wanted to see him. "General, I want to ask you something." They said Wu Fa was a spy. "I don't know if it's true," Zaphros asked anxiously as soon as he came in. "This is indeed true. Wu Fa has been trying to steal the manufacturing method of our weapons," Levi said. Zaphros was struck by lightning. "How could this be possible? If it's true, you will punish him?" Zaphros asked. "Death penalty. Anyone who covets my weapon manufacturing method must be sentenced to death. There will be no surprises," Levi said. After hearing Levi's decisive words, Zaphros left here in a daze. He didn't expect that his good friend would end up like this. This incident caused a great wave in the royal guards. After all, Wu Fa was a very famous combat hero. The heroic figure of beheading the general and seizing the flag that day was imprinted in everyone's mind. Fortunately, Levi took advantage of the power of victory, and the matter was quickly settled. In the dark night, Wu Fa lay down in the prison with pain all over his body. Those guys were really ruthless. There was no part of his body that was not painful. Puff! A familiar sound came into Wu Fa's ears, and he immediately became alert. This was the sound of a sharp blade piercing the flesh. He pretended that nothing had happened, just squinting his eyes and looking outside the prison. At this moment, A figure rushed in, and he picked up the key to open the cell. "Zaphros, how could it be you?" Wufa said in shock. "Come with me. The general has already ordered that you will die in 2 days." Zaphros said, "What are you doing?" Wufa looked at him with a touching face. This is really a friend in need. He was already desperate, but he didn't expect Zaphros to save him regardless of his life. "You must remember that for you, I lost a job of 100 dinars a month." Zaphros joked, "Don't worry, as long as you return to my hometown, I will give you a job of 10,000 dinars a month." Wufa laughed. They quickly left the cell, and Wufa saw some dead bodies of guards along the way. "Have you thought about how to leave this village?" Wufa asked. "Of course I have thought about it. I have prepared 2 horses. We just need to fight our way out. The sentries are very lax now," Zaphros said. "This will alarm the guards. They will definitely send out cavalry to chase. It will be difficult to escape far even in the dark," Wufa said. Zaphros thought about it and nodded. What he said made sense. "I have a better idea. How about we kidnap Levi? We can use his token to get out. This way we have more time to escape," Wufa said. Zaphros looked at him in shock. "Are you crazy? Is Levi so easy to kidnap?" "Believe me, I have a way," Wufa said. "Are you really a spy?" Zaphros asked. He didn't believe that Wufa kidnapped Levi just to escape. He might have some ulterior motive. "No, but I am really interested in the method of casting steel swords." Wufa didn't want to deceive this friend who had risked his life for him, so he told the truth. Zaphros looked at him with a complicated expression, and then said, "I object. This is too dangerous. If you object, I will do it alone," Wufa said. "You are such a bastard." Zaphros was a little furious. "You are right. Sometimes I think so too." Wufa laughed at himself. Zaphros really had no way to deal with him, so he had to follow him to sneak to where Levi lived. "Come on, you go first." Wufa stood outside a large courtyard, doing horse stance, with his hands on his knees. Zaphros didn't say anything. He just ran, stepped on Wufa's hands, and jumped onto the wall. After he rode on the wall, he stretched out his hands. Wufa started to charge. He jumped on the wall and grabbed Zaphros' hands, and Zaphros pulled him to the wall. "You are so heavy, ordinary people can't pull you up," Zaphros complained. "Then I'll go first next time." Zaphros shook his head. It would be uncomfortable to have someone step on his hand because of his height, so he should go first. The two sneaked to Levi's residence secretly. Chapter 157 Hijacking. Levi didn't know that someone was plotting against him, and he was still sleeping soundly at this time. Without a favorite beauty and no entertainment, he had nothing else to do except sleep. In his dream, he vaguely heard some noise outside, and when he opened his eyes, he found a dark shadow hitting him hard on the back of his neck. "Damn, who is this bastard?" Rebellion. Before fainting, Levi cursed in his heart. Wufa directly reached out and took off the gold ring on his hand, which was actually equivalent to the official seal in the East. The Roman general used this gold ring to stamp. During the Hannibal War, a consul died in battle and the ring was seized. Rome quickly sent troops to spread the message to all places: never believe in orders with the consul's seal. Since the war was over, the guards were not strict, and they easily escaped from the village. 2 hours later, when the sentry changed shifts, they found that the guards on duty were missing. They immediately rushed into Levi's residence and found it in a mess, and Levi was not in bed. The whole village quickly became abuzz, with soldiers on martial law everywhere. The captain of the guard, Plautus, was sweating profusely. He searched for a long time but could not find Levi. Instead, he found the body of the guard. Levi's fate was self-evident. "Chase them all, and we must bring the general back," Plautus roared angrily. He couldn't imagine what the consequences would be if this matter was reported back to Rome. The general won the battle, but was kidnapped. This was simply his shame. Levi groaned hard, and he felt as if his whole body was falling apart. But soon he found something wrong, because he felt that he was constantly shaking. He opened his eyes and found that he was tied to a war horse. "I have left them enough clues, and I believe they will chase to the south." Wufa's voice came from the side. "Then we quickly go east and turn to Egypt," Zaphrodite said. "That's right. Why don't you go west? There are black people there, and the three of us are too conspicuous." Hearing this, Levi was shocked. Zafiros actually betrayed him. He didn't say anything, but thought about it quietly. Wufa tried to steal the steel sword technology. He kidnapped himself for this purpose. He should think of a way to get out as soon as possible, and it would be best if he could find a technology to replace the steel sword. Levi kept thinking, and finally he came up with a barely feasible way to get out. "Are you awake?" At this time, Wufa actually discovered Levi's abnormality. Levi raised his head and looked around, and found that they were still on the prairie. Some zebras were grazing leisurely in the distance. Wufa and Zafiros were wearing leather armor and looking at him quietly. "Yes, have I ever done anything wrong to you? Why did you betray me?" Levi said. "Ha ha ha ha. What I did wrong to you? Look at this." Wufa laughed and pulled up his trouser legs, revealing his hairy thighs, with the 3 letters LPL branded on them, which was the abbreviation of Levi's full name. "As a German general, you are branded with such a shameful mark. Do you think I will be grateful to you?" Wufa said angrily. Levi finally understood that Wufa was completely different from other slaves. Other slaves might accept his kindness, but Wufa would never. He was the kind of person with a very proud personality and would never endure the shame of being reduced to a slave. "What about you, Zafiros? I recognize that I am the most benevolent slave owner in Rome. I have never let you down," Levi continued. Zafiros was silent. Before Levi bought it, he was already a slave gladiator, and it was Levi who gave him freedom. Logically, he should be grateful to Levi. "Wufa is my friend. I can't watch him die," Zafiros said. "If you let me go, I will pretend that this incident never happened and our grievances will be written off," Levi said. "Do you think I am a 3-year-old child? If I let you go, you will definitely send people to hunt me down." Wufa laughed. "What do you want?" "I hope you can use something in exchange for my life," Levi said. "Tell me the method of sword making," Wufa said with a greedy face. "As long as they have this method of sword making, their tribe can become extremely powerful and even unify the surrounding tribes." "No problem. If I give it to you, can you let me go?" Levi said. "Yes," Wufa said with a twinkling eye. Levi looked into his eyes. He knew Wufa was lying, but it didn't matter. "Zafiros, can you testify?" Levi asked. He knew he couldn't act too indifferent, otherwise Wufa might get suspicious. "I have no problem," Zafiros said. Wufa looked at him dissatisfied, but didn't say anything in the end. "Do you have paper? I'll write it down for you," Levi said. "No, but you can tell me first," Wufa said. "Okay, first use some saltpeter to dissolve in water, then take some carbon powder and burn it and pass its gas into the solution, then take some sulfur and burn it and pass it into the solution, and finally dry the solution in the sun. This is a special catalyst, which is used to be placed in the melting furnace," Levi said. "What is the catalyst?" Wufa asked puzzledly. "This is a long story. Democritus is one of the proponents of atomic theory, and I am also a supporter of this theory. The so-called catalyst, I think, is the exchange of atoms," Levi said, and he spoke very professionally, using all kinds of professional terms. "Stop, stop, stop." After listening to Levi's words, Wufa felt like listening to a foreign book. He glanced at Zafiros. "Do you understand?" Zafiros shook his head in confusion. He knew what each word meant, but he didn't understand anything when they were put together. "This is just one of the preparations. In addition, lime, sawdust, pig bone powder, glass." Levi said a lot of things in a row, including many useless things. Wufa's head hurt when he heard it, and when Levi mentioned a lot of special terms such as temperature, he had a feeling that even if he was given the formula, he might not be able to cast a steel sword. No wonder steel swords are so expensive and so complicated to make, Wufa thought secretly. "When we get there, you teach me how to cast swords, and I will let you go," Wufa said. "No problem, but we need a big furnace, the kind for smelting iron," Levi said. Wufa thought about it and agreed. The 3 of them did not dare to stay for long and headed east, but after walking for several days, they were blocked by a desert. "Thank you very much for the reward from the Queen." Chapter 158. Injured. Egypt is full of deserts and semi-deserts. The west is the Libyan desert, which occupies 2/3 of the country's area. Most of it is quicksand, with oases such as Karji and Siwa in the middle. The eastern Arabian desert is mostly gravel and exposed rock hills. It can be said that 95% of the country is desert. If you want to go to Egypt, you must go through the desert. In a black gathering place, a black elder was answering Aphrodite's questions respectfully. Thanks to Levi's great victory, the Romans now have a very high prestige in Numidia. After knowing that a Roman master wanted to ask questions, the chief of this tribe found the most knowledgeable person in the village. This black elder traveled all over the country when he was young, and he was the only black man in the tribe who could speak Greek and Latin. Is there really no other way to pass through this desert except to join a caravan? Aphrodite asked with a gloomy face. Yes, the desert in the east is very dangerous, with quicksand everywhere. Only the most experienced guides can pass through this desert. Ordinary people who enter the desert will die, and there is no way to survive, the old man said tremblingly. Then how can I join the caravan? Zaphros asked. There will be a caravan passing through here every week. You just need to wait for a few days. Wait for a few days? How is that possible? He can't wait for 2 days, let alone a few days. Those Romans are not idiots, and they may catch up at any time. Then can we hire a guide? My child is a guide for a caravan. Apart from him, I am the only one who has walked out of that desert. Zaphros looked at him speechlessly, looking like he would fall down when the wind blew. He must have crossed the desert when he was young. The enthusiastic chief replenished them with food and fresh water, and then Zaphros left the tribe. He didn't lie. It is indeed very dangerous to pass through this desert, Zaphros said after returning to the place where Levi and Wufa were hiding. Since Wufa was so conspicuous, all the negotiations were left to Aphrodisiac. After arriving at the edge of the desert, Livius found that Wufa and Aphrodisiac were about to enter the desert without any preparation, and he was almost scared to death. You two idiots, don't drag me with you if you want to die. Can you enter the desert casually? But think about it and understand. Wufa came from Germania, where there was no desert, and Aphrodisiac came from Bulgaria in later generations. There were no large deserts there, and they had no idea how terrible the desert was. Under Levi's strong protest, they finally decided to find a tribe and ask how to pass through the desert. After listening to Aphrodisiac's words, Wufa hesitated. What should they do next? If they go south, it will be the territory of Numidia, and they may encounter the Roman army that is marching south. Going north is the province of Africa, and going west is even worse, as they just escaped from there. After the two discussed, they finally decided to go all the way north and look for a caravan that could cross the desert. A day later, a Roman cavalry and a Numidian cavalry arrived at the tribe. Plautus was not an idiot after all. After discovering that Wufa and Aphrodisias were missing at the same time, he immediately formulated a capture strategy based on Wufa's height. Scouts were sent everywhere to inform all tribes to capture anyone over 1.85 meters tall, regardless of whether they were black or white, and they could only be released after the Roman army identified them. There would be a heavy reward for those who reported, and the whole clan would be exterminated if they dared to conceal the information. Hepzur was also shocked when he found out. He wanted Levi to nominate him as the king of Numidia. What would happen if Levi disappeared? The anger in his heart can be imagined. So the two sides joined hands to set extremely severe punishment measures. Their measures soon paid off. Someone found traces of Levi and his group in the wild, and Plautus immediately sent people to chase them. Seeing Aeneas sitting on his favorite chair with a cold face, the tribal chief carefully reported everything that happened yesterday. After hearing his description of Zaphro, Aeneas was ecstatic. That's right, it must be Zaphro. There's no mistake. Finally found those two bastards. Are they going to Egypt? Quickly inform the captain of this matter, and tell him that Zaphro has been found. In addition, any caravan is prohibited from going to Egypt. Anyone who dares to disobey the order will be killed. Aeneas said viciously. Yes, sir. Although it was a big deal to prohibit caravans from going to Egypt, it was nothing compared to Levi's life, and he believed that Hepzur would definitely support him. In addition, you provided supplies to those bastards who were the public enemies of Rome and should have been nailed to the cross and burned to death. Tell me how you should make up for your mistake. Aeneas felt that he had nowhere to vent his anger, so he said to the tribal chief. The minister chief cried out that he was wronged. He was just very enthusiastic to provide supplies to the Romans, but he didn't expect that he would flatter the horse's leg. Seeing Aeneas' aggressive look, the black old man next to him said, "I know there are several oases in the desert that are necessary supply points. If they want to go to Egypt, they must stop at those places for supply. Why don't you send people to those supply points and wait for them there?" "Yes, that's a good idea." Aeneas thought for a while and said, "Although sending troops to Egypt is a bit abrupt, given the relationship between Rome and Egypt, Egypt must not dare to object at all." The black old man couldn't help but open his eyes wide. He just mentioned it casually, but he didn't expect that he really decided to send troops into Egypt. "You know, this is a big deal. What did that person do to cause them to make such a big fuss?" In the dark night, Levi and the other two gathered around a fire. Woofa leaned against a tree, his face was like gold paper, and he covered his right arm, which had a very deep wound. Levi tore a piece of cloth from his clothes, washed it, boiled it with boiling water, and then bandaged Woofa. "Be careful, don't do any strenuous activities during this period, otherwise the wound may tear again. You'd better find a place to buy some medicine, otherwise the wound is likely to get infected," Levi said. Woofa watched his every move vigilantly, and only said after he found that he was not playing tricks, "I know." Woofa and his companions did not know that the Roman army had already caught up with them. Some time ago, they wanted to contact a tribe and join a caravan to Egypt. However, they were reported by that tribe, and the three were surrounded by a large number of Numidian cavalry. The two sides fought a fierce battle, and Woofa was injured in the end. If Zaphrodite had not threatened Levi's life, they might have died there. In fact, the news of Levi's kidnapping was tightly covered by Geta and others, and no one dared to spread the news. The next chapter answers questions about fantasy world and trace C. Don't subscribe. It has nothing to do with the content of this book. The next chapter answers questions about fantasy world and trace C. Don't subscribe. It has nothing to do with the content. Chapter 159 answering the questions of fantasy world C. Do not subscribe. Don't subscribe. Don't subscribe. A few days ago, Fantasy World and Trace C on other platforms asked me which country's civilization I like. Why? On the one hand, I don't like voice speaking, and on the other hand, I think this question is not easy to answer. I thought about it for many days before I decided to answer this question. Western civilization originated from Greece and Rome. This is a threshold that the Western world cannot avoid. It was with the legacy of Greek and Roman civilization that Western civilization resisted the rule of the Church and established modern civilization. Any civilization needs philosophy to guide it, whether it is Eastern or Western. For example, Confucianism and Marxism are actually a kind of philosophy. Philosophy is about thinking, and it deviates from actual thinking. There are essences in it, but from today's perspective, there are more dregs. In Hegel's words, we cannot talk about philosophy without history. Moreover, many things in philosophy cannot be proved right or wrong, but can only be said to be good or bad. Religion is also considered a kind of philosophy, and I even think it is a very important part. There are many philosophers in Christianity. Of course, their philosophy is based on the existence of God, but they have different interpretations of the existence of God. This has created a phenomenon that there are many Western thoughts, and they are all strange. There are good ones, but more are dregs. For example, women's rights and human rights. We cannot say that women's rights are dregs, but women's rights have been used as a tool for political struggle since the first day of its birth. The first woman who proposed women's rights was beheaded after being used, and it is still the case today. Women's rights are still a political tool in the hands of many people, and are even used to deal with other countries. Human rights are even more of a favorite tool of Western countries. There are also LGBT and other strange ideas, which have caused confusion in Western thought. Many of them have been used by politicians and may even cause national division, but politicians don't care about these at all. Therefore, the West is more exploratory in some aspects of thought. These explorations have advantages and disadvantages and may even cause harm to the country. China has been under a monarchy for a long time. In order to rule for a long time, the monarch pays attention to stability. Whether it is etiquette or filial piety, The purpose is actually for the long-term rule of the monarch. So the unique Chinese civilization was born. Chinese civilization pays attention to ideological stability, but does not exclude material changes. For example, the large-scale equipment of muskets and the introduction of Western artillery. During this period, Chinese civilization has always been ahead of foreign countries in some aspects. For example, before Napoleon defeated Germany, Germany had always been a serf society, and its level of civilization was actually far inferior to that of China, not to mention Russia. Until the Qing dynasty, the Manchus not only emphasized ideological stability, but also rejected Western advanced technology, which led to the backwardness of Chinese science and technology. As a result, Eastern civilization was defeated by the West, and various civilizations competed in China, and finally Marxist philosophy won. In fact, to this day, stability is still China's pursuit, such as maintaining stability. The ancient Eastern civilization has created a unique Chinese people. The Chinese are smart, hard-working, and diligent. This is a good gene left by the ancient Chinese civilization to the Chinese people. Therefore, China's strength is predictable. I think China will sooner or later surpass the United States and become a world power. But ideological stability has always been China's pursuit. In many aspects, it dare not cross the line, and the control in all aspects is very strict. Of course, many aspects of the West are also very strict, such as discrimination against Jews. It can only be said that the two civilizations have their own advantages and disadvantages, and different specialties. Western civilization has developed to this day, and some aspects of thought are open, but it is easy to cause confusion and division. Eastern civilization tends to be conservative, but the pursuit of stability will lead to strength. This is my temporary understanding of Eastern and Western civilizations. In fact, I always feel that I don't understand too much, and this understanding is very shallow. Chapter 160 Self-Rescue. Hepzur didn't want to and didn't dare to, because it was related to his throne. They just ordered that the life of the kidnapped man must be saved at all costs. They only said that the man was of noble status and could not be harmed even a little. Levi and his men fled overnight and had left Numidia and arrived in Africa. The Roman army has not yet arrived in Africa, but I believe they will arrive soon. Zaphrodisias said. Wufa nodded. Levi still had a surrendered legion and a small number of soldiers stationed in Africa. In fact, this was still a war zone. I have heard that there is a city not far ahead. We will rest there for a while. I will go to get you medicine. Zaphrodisias said. Okay, thank you very much. What are we two saying thank you for? Levi smiled coldly. And you will be in trouble when your army catches up. Finally, the three of them hid in a small forest outside the town, and then Zaphrodisias went into the city to get medicine, and Wufa began to torture Levi. The torture here was not physical torture, but asking him questions constantly. After getting the sword-making method provided by Levi, Wufa would ask some questions every now and then, which made Levi complain bitterly, in order to verify whether Levi was playing tricks in it, which made Levi very worried. Wufa was completely different from ordinary Germans. The current Germans were rude and barbaric, and did not know the slightest discipline. On the contrary, Wufa was meticulous, determined, ambitious, and extremely studious. He was very interested in everything related to weapons and war. After Zaphros came back, he carried a big package in his hand. This is what you want, Zaphros said. Wufa opened the package and saw that there were all kinds of things inside. From today on, you teach me how to make a sword, Wufa said. But how can I teach without a furnace? Levi asked. Teach those things that don't require a furnace, such as the catalyst you mentioned, Wufa said. Levi narrowed his eyes slightly, and he glanced at Zaphros. Zaphros turned his head to the side. He probably knew that once Wufa learned these things, Levi would most likely be killed. Okay, Levi said expressionlessly. This is sulfur. We must grind it very fine, like powder. Levi took out a pottery jar and said. Wufa took the sulfur. He looked at it carefully, and then licked it carefully, which made Levi feel nauseous. This thing is poisonous. You'd better not eat it, Levi said. Toxic? Wufa asked doubtfully. Yes, why would I lie to you? This thing and saltpeter are both poisonous. and it's easy to get respiratory diseases if you carry them with you. Levi's eyes flashed with a hidden light. What is respiratory disease? Wufa asked very eagerly. This is a general term I made for some diseases, such as nose, throat, lungs, etc., which are caused by the respiratory system. All diseases are respiratory diseases, Levi said. Wufa knew that Levi was a great philosopher, very proficient in medicine, and even opened the Capuo Academy. But Wufa was a suspicious person and did not believe him immediately. You didn't lie to me? Levi looked at him with disdain. He obviously didn't know anything, but he kept asking questions all day long. Do you understand if I explain to you? I lied to you. Levi's eyes made Wufa feel uncomfortable, but he finally held back. Then put the sulfur and saltpeter with you first. Wufa said. No, I don't want it. Put it with you. Levi said hurriedly. I said I'll put it with you. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Wufa said fiercely. If you dare to say another word, be careful that I will beat you up. Hearing this, Levi took it down helplessly and sealed it. Wufa looked at him with disdain. This man was too delicate. If he was asked to beat him up, he would do anything. I think it's better to put all the things with him, so I can relax. Zaphros thought. Wufa agreed after thinking about it. It was troublesome to carry such a big bag of things. With Levi as a free laborer, of course he would use it if he could. Levi was dissatisfied on the surface, but he was already very happy in his heart. Then the three of them hurried on their way, while Levi taught Wufa all kinds of knowledge. After a long journey, they were getting closer and closer to the Mediterranean. At this time, the inspections in various places became more and more strict. The Roman army had already discovered their traces, and there were inspection sentries everywhere. Levi had noticed the fierce light flashing in Wufa's eyes more than once, and he knew that he could not wait any longer. Levi carefully mixed the sulfur and carbon powder in a ratio of 16:3, and then said, "This is what I call the combustion aid. As long as you add a little to the furnace, the temperature of the furnace can be greatly increased." Wufa carefully took the mixture. Since Levi said that this thing was poisonous, he also had a resistance to this thing. Not bad. Wufa nodded and said, "Why don't you light a fire today? I have been feeling unwell recently. I feel like I am going to have a fever," Levi said. In fact, he did not lie. Whether in his previous life or this life, he had never lived such a displaced life. He was really sleeping in the open air and couldn't even drink hot water. If he was not still young, he would have collapsed long ago. It's too tense recently, so it's better not to light a fire, Wufa said coldly. But look at my face, Levi said. Wufa found that Levi's face was indeed a little flushed, but he didn't mean to change his mind. Let's have one. The weather is getting colder, Zaphros said. Hearing this, Wufa no longer refused. After all, Zaphros saved his life. The three of them lay down silently around the fire, and not far away was a tied war horse. Levi turned his back to the fire, which was a habit he had developed these days, and Wufa and Zaphros had no doubts. What they didn't know was that Levi was quietly opening some pottery jars filled with a mixture of sulfur and charcoal, throwing some of them on the ground, and then putting saltpeter in it and stirring it carefully. 1 sulfur, 2 saltpeter and 3 charcoal. This is the ratio of black gunpowder. Of course, here 1 sulfur is 1 cadi, saltpeter and charcoal are 2, which is very close to the ideal ratio of black gunpowder in later generations. Since there was no weighing tool, Levi could only mix roughly based on experience. He prayed to the gods and Buddhas in his heart that the proportion must be correct. His movements were very slow and did not attract their attention at all. After doing all this, Levi covered up all traces and stood up. Where are you going? Wufa opened his eyes and asked. Can I untie my hands? Levi said with an unchanged expression. Untie them within my sight and don't try to escape, Wufa said coldly. Chapter 161 Rescued. Understood. Levi walked away with the pottery jar. The seal was open, not sealed. What's in your hand? Wufa asked. This, a good thing. After saying that, Levi asked the pottery jar to be thrown into the fire, and then quickly lay down on the ground. Wufa could not help but get angry. This cowardly guy dared to throw things around. But watching Levi's actions, he felt a sense of danger for no reason, so he imitated Levi's actions and jumped to the side. A large amount of black gunpowder scattered in the air, and the pottery jar fell into the fire and shattered directly. Boom! Suddenly there was a loud noise in the fire, and the black gunpowder exploded, blowing up the entire fire, and a large amount of charcoal and pottery fragments flew everywhere. Ah! Ah! Two shrill screams came from behind Levi, and he didn't even turn his head, and stumbled directly towards the warhorse. In order to ensure that the pottery jar could be thrown accurately into the fire, he was quite close to the fire. Levi felt that he was also injured. Of course, he dared to guarantee that Wufa and Zaphros were more seriously injured. After arriving at the warhorse, he untied the rope, rode on the warhorse, and rushed directly into the darkness. Half a day later, a figure stood up tremblingly. He was in tatters and covered in blood. "Levi, I must kill you," Wufa said angrily. It may be that too much black gunpowder was spilled, or it may be that the proportion was not right. Wufa was not killed. He looked at Zaphros, who was covered in blood. Zaphros had completely lost his breath. "Don't worry, I will avenge you," Wufa said painfully. He staggered towards the warhorse, then rode a warhorse and rushed into the darkness. In the early morning, a carriage slowly moved forward under the protection of several guards. There were two girls sitting in the carriage. One of them was in her prime, with a straight nose, clear and bright pupils, milky skin, long black hair, and a sly smile from time to time. She was a very energetic young girl. The other one was blonde and blue-eyed, with a plump figure, but dressed as a slave. The two of them looked intimate, and it seemed that they were slaves who grew up with the girl. "Master, if we can't bid for the tax farming rights this time, do we have to go back to Rome?" asked the blonde girl. "Yes, the war in Rome has subsided, and we can finally go back." The black-haired girl wrinkled her cute nose and said, "I have been away from Rome for so long, I don't know what Rome has become. I heard that many people died in Rome." "I think it's better not to go back," said the blonde girl. The black-haired girl was also a little scared. She gently patted her indescribable parts, which jumped around like a little white rabbit. Finally, she said, "This is my father's order. What can I do? It's all Sulla and Livy's fault. They are the ones who forced the family to this point." The blonde girl said dissatisfiedly, "Their family is a distant relative of the Scipio family. It is precisely because of the relationship with the Scipio family that their family can operate a large number of industries in Africa and make huge profits. Because the province of Africa was conquered by Scipio, the Scipio family can be said to be the protector of Africa. But everything changed after Scipio stood on the wrong side. Scipio was killed by Livy and his son Nasica was exiled, which directly led to the loss of power of their family in Africa. The industry that the family was originally franchised to was prohibited from operating, and they were constantly excluded from all aspects. A large number of Roman elders and knights were killed by Sulla, but more families benefited from it. They all extended their hands to Africa, trying to seize the benefits that originally belonged to the losers. Faced with this situation, the girl's father had to sell off various industries to reduce the conflict of interests with the new rich. The girl pouted her mouth. What could she do about it? At this moment, the carriage suddenly stopped. "What happened?" the girl asked. "Miss, a stranger fell unconscious on the road and looked like he was injured," a guard said. The girl got off the carriage curiously, and walked forward to check the stranger, who fell to the ground regardless of the guard's obstruction. "This person looks so handsome," the blonde girl said, a little crazy. Although the stranger on the road was ragged, with a lot of blood on his body, and had some stubble, he looked like a handsome young man. The girl went up and touched his forehead, then said, "He has a fever. He is indeed sick, and there are wounds on his body. If they are not treated, it may be fatal. Let's save him, master," the blonde girl said. The girl thought about it and agreed, not noticing the dark face of the guard. "Water. Water," Levi said with difficulty, and he heard a girl's voice in the haze. He opened his eyes and found a blonde girl sitting next to him. "Do you want some water?" "Wait a minute." The girl quickly poured him a bowl of water, and Levi took it and drank it directly. "Where am I?" Levi asked after putting down the bowl. He found that this was a luxuriously decorated room, and this family should not be an ordinary family. "This is the guest room of the Camillus family," My master saw you lying on the road on the way and saved you," the blonde girl said enthusiastically. "Who is your master?" "Amelia, the eldest lady of the Camillus family," the blonde girl said. "Thank you for saving me." After finding that he had escaped with his control, Levi finally breathed a sigh of relief. He felt that he could rest at ease. At this time, he found that he was in pain all over, so he asked, "What happened to me?" "You have a fever and are injured. The doctor said that you are very sick. Fortunately, you met Our Lady, otherwise you would be dead," the blonde girl said. "Thank her so much. I will definitely repay her," Levi said sincerely. "My master doesn't need your repayment." "By the way, what's your name?" "My name is Lucius Scilius. What about you?" Levi decided to borrow Gilius' name. He didn't want to reveal his true identity. "Africa is in chaos now, and the remnants of Domitius have not been wiped out yet. It would be bad if these people had malice towards him." "You can call me Menania," the blonde girl said. "Are you Roman?" "Yes," Levi said. Menania asked Livy about some things, and Livy made up a story and told her that he was a Roman who came to Africa to do business. Unfortunately, he encountered robbers and was kidnapped. He tried every means to escape. Chapter 162 Camillus. Hearing this, Menania felt a wave of sympathy. This man was so pitiful. Africa was indeed in chaos now, and it was not surprising to encounter robbers. Livius asked her about the situation here and found that this place was near the city of Utica. Unexpectedly, he returned to the city of Utica after turning around. Soon he learned about their relationship with the Scipio family, which made him feel fortunate that he had lied. Under the care of Menania, Livius recovered quickly, and soon he could get out of bed and walk. During this period, Menania helped him change the medicine from time to time, which made him very grateful. In a garden, Livius lay on a recliner, quietly admiring the beautiful scene. At this time, North Africa was not full of deserts like in later generations. In addition to business, the two things that the Carthaginians were best at were agriculture, and their agricultural technology was very advanced. The food produced was not only self-sufficient, but also capable of export. At this time, a voice came from the side. "Dad, why are you so happy today?" "Of course it's a good thing. Our family is saved. Metellus has adopted Scipio's grandson as his grandson, and Metellus's eldest son Kellel has come to Africa. He will stand up for us to prevent us from being treated unfairly." "Really? That's great." The Metellus family is a wealthy family in Rome. They have married countless wealthy families in Rome and are Sulla's subordinates. Even Levi has to be wary of them. The voice said proudly. "So we don't have to go back to Rome?" "Yes, we don't have to go back for the time being. Rome is in chaos now, so it's better not to go back." The girl felt sorry for a while. She missed Rome very much. At this moment, a cry of surprise suddenly came from his side. "Who are you? Why are you here?" His father pointed to a young man lying on a recliner and said. The young man glanced at him lazily. "Hello, my name is Gilius, and your daughter saved me." The middle-aged man, who was a little plump, glanced at his daughter. The girl looked at him. Although she hadn't seen him for a few days, she could still roughly recognize his appearance. "Yes, I did save someone a while ago." "My daughter, let me tell you, it's very chaotic outside now. Don't save people casually. You might save an accomplice of Domitius and come back." Seeing that Levi was not an assassin, the middle-aged man immediately became arrogant. Levi was speechless for a while. "It seemed that your backer Scipio was an accomplice of Domitius." "My father was about to die at that time. If he was not saved, he would have died," the girl said pitifully. "Then you have to ask about his origins. Boy, what do you do?" Camillus asked sternly. "I am a poor Roman merchant. I met robbers on the way and my money and goods were robbed," Levi said very pitifully. "So now you can't repay my daughter for saving my life." It seemed so. Levi found that he was penniless now, and was it really okay to do a favor and expect a reward? "How many days have you lived here? How much food have you eaten? How much medicine did you spend on me?" the middle-aged man said with a shrewd look. Levi was speechless. Did he run into grand debt? "Dad, don't be like this," the girl said anxiously, pulling her father's arm. "Daughter, don't worry about this. Boy, my daughter saved your life. You eat my food, drink my food, and take my things. Shouldn't you repay me?" the middle-aged man continued. Levi nodded helplessly. There was nothing wrong with what he said. "Look," he nodded himself, the middle-aged man said to the girl. The girl covered her eyes in shame. It was really embarrassing. "Then what can you do?" "I can read and do arithmetic." Levi thought for a while and said, "Can you keep accounts?" "I should be able to do this. I have seen many account books," Levi said. He often looked over the family's account books, but he had never actually operated them. "Not bad. What else can you do?" the middle-aged man said with a smile. "Those who can read and do arithmetic these days are all talents." "I was a soldier." "What position?" If he told the truth, he would be killed if he commanded 6 legions and thousands of cavalry. This possibility was very high. "I was a soldier," Levi said helplessly. "You are a useless guy," the middle-aged man said with contempt. Levi smiled bitterly and touched his nose. He was actually despised. "Remember to report to the guard tomorrow. If the account office needs help, you must go there too. Actually, I can write an IOU. I will return it tenfold in 10 days at most," Levi said. 10 days. After 10 days, I'm afraid you will run away. Don't try to trick me. I don't know how many ways of evading debts like you have seen in my life. To tell you the truth, I used to be a tax farmer, the middle-aged fat man said with disdain. Levi was sweating profusely. "This guy is really..." the middle-aged fat man threatened and lured him again. And finally Levi agreed reluctantly. He left triumphantly. Of course, he didn't mention the salary at all. It seems that if Levi doesn't ask him for it, he will refuse to pay. "I'm very sorry. My dad is like this. I'm sorry to embarrass you," the bright girl said apologetically. "It's nothing. I won't mind," Levi said. "This is nothing compared to the life-saving grace. If your injury is okay, then let's go now," Amelia said. Actually, there's no need." "Are you going to Utica in a while?" Levi asked. "Yes," the bright girl said. "You can just take me with you when you go," Levi said. He was really afraid of meeting Wufa. Even if he really met him, maybe he could use these people to deal with it. "No problem. Do you have relatives in Utica?" the girl, Amelia, said. "Why do you say that? Otherwise, why would you say that you will pay it back tenfold within 10 days? Ha ha ha." "Yes, I have relatives," Levi said quickly. At the same time, he complained in his heart that a lie really needs more lies to cover it up. "What does your relative do?" 2 days later, Camillus took his daughter and a group of guards to Utica. It was said that Metella's son had arrived here. When they arrived outside the city of Utica, they found a large number of soldiers who were carefully checking. "What happened?" Amelia asked. "It is said that 2 soldiers kidnapped a guest of Livius and stole his gold ring. I think he deserved it. He actually went to visit Livius," Menenia said. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163 Bidding. "Yeah," little Amelia nodded with a smile. Levi couldn't help but touch his nose. "Is it really okay to make up stories about him in front of him?" "Gilius, do you think we are right?" Menenia said at this time. Levi's face was embarrassed. This. Hee. The 2 girls laughed like silver bells, and then whispered to Levi, pointing at him from time to time. Levi vaguely heard something like "idiot goose," which made him smile bitterly. What he didn't notice was that the captain of the guard, Scipio, looked at him with extremely unfriendly eyes. After settling down in Camillus's house in Utica, Levi thought about what he should do next. He didn't trust the garrison in Utica very much, because that was the legion that surrendered under Domitius. Should he go to the governor of Africa, Serbia? During wartime, Levi had the right to appoint a temporary governor. For example, in history, after Pompey pacified Sicily, he appointed his brother-in-law Menmith as the governor of Sicily. Livius thought about it and realized that the only capable person among his subordinates was Serbia, so he urgently transferred him to be the governor of Africa. He had not met him before going to Numidia, and he did not know how well he could do. At this time, the captain of the guard Scipio walked in and said, "Attention everyone, no one is allowed to leave today. Have a good rest. We have to accompany the master to attend a very important meeting tomorrow." Hearing this, the guards in the room wailed, and some even wanted to go out and have some fun. "Forget it, let's do it tomorrow. Anyway, there is no rush," Livius thought. After announcing the order, the captain of the guard called Levi outside. "Gellius, you'd better stay away from Menenia in the future." Livius looked at this man in confusion. "Are you sick? What's wrong with Menenia and me?" "Even if you are jealous, you have to find the right person." "What if I don't stay away from her?" Livius said with a smile. "I promise you will regret it." The captain of the guard sneered. He had more than a dozen ways to ruin the reputation of a foreigner, even if he was a Roman. Then he left. Levi gave him a middle finger fiercely. What kind of person was that? That night, Levi found a large number of people coming in and out. These people were wearing all kinds of gorgeous clothes, and it was obvious that they were either rich or noble. The captain of the guard immediately gave Levi a warning and ordered him to keep watch today, which made Levi very angry. After dinner, Menenia found Levi again with a bowl of medicine. "How is your injury?" "It feels very good. I feel like I can kill a cow." Levi acted like Popeye. Menenia chuckled and punched him lightly. "You are really a tease again. Hurry up and drink the medicine." "Can I not drink it? You see, I am completely healed," Levi said with a bitter face. The medicine was too hard to drink, and he was very skeptical about the medical level at that time. Menenia immediately frowned and crossed her waist. "Why are you disobedient again? Just drink when I tell you to." "Stop talking nonsense." Looking at the unruly Menenia, Levi shook his head speechlessly and drank the medicine while pinching his nose. "That's good." Menenia gently patted Levi's head, just like patting a pet, and Levi was so angry that he wanted to hit someone. After finally suppressing his unhappy mood, Levi asked, "Why are there so many people tonight?" "They are here to discuss the issue of tax contracting tomorrow," Menenia said. "Tax contracting?" "Yes, Rome's taxes are all contracted by tax farmers, and they can even unite to bid for the taxes of the entire province. Due to the war, the tax contracting problem in Africa has not been resolved. In order to solve the tax contracting problem next year, the governor of Africa, Cerobio, summoned all merchants who are interested in tax contracting to gather a nudicate to bid. Tomorrow is the bidding meeting?" Levi thought for a while and said, "Tax farmers are a very lucrative business. Each province needs to pay 1/10 of its income to Rome, which is commonly known as the tithe. These taxes are collected by tax farmers, who take 1/10 of the tax as their own reward, which means that 1% of the entire province's income will fall into the pockets of tax farmers, which shows how lucrative the income of tax farmers is." "Yes, I heard that Governor Cerobio has said that anyone who has a relationship with Scipio is not allowed to participate in the bidding. If it weren't for Kellal's pressure, our master would not even be qualified to bid." Menenia waved her little fist and said bitterly, "There is nothing wrong with this. The relationship between her and the Scipio family is like fire and water." Camillus did the right thing, but Levi flattered Menenia and said, "You are right, this is really hateful." Menenia was very satisfied with Levi's understanding. She continued, "And I heard that he accepted a lot of bribes and set a lot of conditions to exclude many Roman merchants. He is really a corrupt official." Levi was sweating coldly. "Is there such a thing? But it seems that every governor is doing bribes. It would be abnormal if he didn't." "Do you know who will attend the meeting tomorrow?" Levi asked. "I heard that many big figures will come, such as Kellal, and Pompey's butler, but I don't know his name." And Menenia said everything. She seemed to be very interested in these gossips and knew a lot of things clearly. In addition to Kellal and Pompey's butler, some new Roman nobles also sent their men to compete for the fat meat here. After all, tax farmers are a sure thing to make money. Levi felt unhappy. He had become the protector of many cities in Africa, but he didn't expect so many people to come and fight for the fat meat. They didn't take him seriously. The next day, Levi, who had been guarding the night, hadn't slept well yet, and was called out of bed in a daze. "Hurry up, everyone is here, and you are the only one left." When he opened his eyes, he found that the captain of the guard was looking at him with gloating. "What time is it now?" Levi looked at the sky, and the sun was already high. The captain of the guard snorted coldly. He had just warned him yesterday, But he had talked to Menenia for so long. He was really shameless. Today he would have a good harvest. He left here directly without even paying attention to him. Levi put on his clothes with a black face, and found that everyone had gathered, leaving only him alone. Even Camillus was waiting for him. Seeing the dazed Levi, Camillus was so angry that he cursed loudly. Chapter 164 Hanan, Gilius, did I invite you here so that you can sleep in? I've never seen such a lazy guard like you. Are you here to be a boss or a guard? Then he started to scold her again, which made Levi very angry. The captain of the guard was so insidious that he dared to do something to him. This matter is not over yet. Do you really think that Levi can be bullied at will? He has always been the only one who bullies others. How can others bully him? A cold light flashed in the captain's eyes. You are too naive to think that this matter is over. Okay, father, don't say any more. I heard that he worked a long shift last night. There won't be a next time, Amelia said while shaking her father's arm. Seeing his daughter speaking for her, Camillus stopped, then looked at his daughter in confusion. You keep speaking for him. Do you like her, father? What are you talking about? Amelia blushed with anger and quickly got into the car. It's good that he's fine. I warn you, that guy has no money and no power. You'd better not associate with him. Although our family is down and out, we are of true aristocratic origin. There are many Roman dignitaries in the place I'm taking you to today. If you like anyone, tell me. Ah, a sharp cry came from the carriage. Okay, I won't say anything. I'm leaving now, Camillus said hurriedly. The convoy slowly set off. At this time, Levi felt the hostility of the captain of the guard and other guards. It seems that he was excluded by a group of unknown guys. Not long after, they came to a hall near the Piazza del Popolo in Utica, which is the location of the Senate of Utica and was temporarily requisitioned by the governor as a bidding venue. A large number of carriages have been parked in the square. Camillus quickly talked to some people with a flattering face. Those people looked indifferent, which embarrassed the guards. It seems that the status of Camillus, a down-and-out nobleman, is not as high as imagined. At this time, a young man came over with a smile on his face. Amelia, how are you doing recently? Not at all. Why are you here? Amelia pouted and said, it seems that she is very familiar with the young man. It's not that your parents stopped me, otherwise I would have come to find you long ago, the young man said with a smile. Seeing the tone of the young man, Levi felt unhappy for no reason. Who is that man? Levi asked. He is the son of an elder in Utica City, named Hanan. It's just that the head of the family doesn't like them to be together because he is not Roman, Menenia said. See, this is a perfect match made in heaven. You and the young lady are far from it. At this time, the captain of the guard came over and said. Levi looked at him with disgust. It was really like a dogskin plaster. He couldn't avoid it. Do you like the young lady? At this time, Menenia said with a face full of resentment. How is this possible? Levi laughed. Not the best. None of you men are good things. Menenia snorted coldly. Levi couldn't help but touch his nose. He was fine just now. Why did he suddenly turn his face away? Did he do something wrong just now? In fact, there are still good men among men, such as me. At this time, the captain of the guard said in a long-term tone, you are not a good thing either. Get out of here. Menenia raised her waist again and said to the captain of the guard. The captain of the guard left here awkwardly, which made him hate Levi even more. Damn, this temper is really hot. I'll just call her Little Pepper in the future, Levi thought secretly. At this time, Camillus found the young man and immediately walked back angrily. Hanan, didn't I warn you to get close to my daughter? I tell you, our Camillus family is a Roman noble family, not a Phoenician like you. Although Camillus's status in front of those Roman merchants is not high, he is tough enough in front of Hanan. I don't know why Levi likes Camillus at this time. Dad, he and I are just ordinary friends. What are you talking about? Amelia said dissatisfiedly. I understand, but my father also has to accompany the governor to the bidding meeting today, so let me come to broaden my horizons. Hanan not only did not show any anger, but said carefully, oh, is your father familiar with the governor? Camillus said, it's okay. Recently, my father often visits the governor's house and has a good relationship with the governor. Although Hanan looked calm, the pride in his tone could not be concealed. Really? Then do you have any inside information? Camillus struggled for a while, and finally asked. Levi looked at him with contempt. It seems that he still thinks highly of him. Why don't we talk aside? Hanan said with a reserved face. At this time, there was a sudden noise from the crowd. What happened? Camillus asked. Demetrius is here. It's Pompey's chief steward Demetrius, someone exclaimed. Who is Demetrius? Amelia couldn't help asking. He used to be a slave next door, but it's said that he is very capable and good at making money. Once he entered the enemy camp alone and persuaded a legion under Scipio to surrender to Sulla as a whole, so he gained his freedom, and he became Pompey's chief steward, managing all money-making things for him. Hanan said hurriedly. Levi couldn't help rolling his eyes. The plan was obviously thought up by them, and it was not executed by Demetrius alone. How could it all be attributed to Demetrius? It turned out to be him. The expressions of Camillus' family were a little complicated. They didn't expect that he would actually rebel against the legion under Scipio, which made them have a bad impression of him. The arrival of Demetrius was like a superstar walking on the red carpet, which aroused the warm welcome of everyone. Demetrius was full of pride. With Pompey's fame, he was also a little famous. Even the kings of some small countries had to curry favor with him, not to mention these rustic businessmen. Surrounded by the crowd, he walked towards the Senate. At this moment, he seemed to find a familiar figure, but soon the figure disappeared. Demetrius shook his head. He was probably dazzled. He should be commanding his 6 legions in the south at this time. How could he be here? After Demetrius went in, several envoys of old nobles came. They stood on the right side in this turmoil. Not only did their own strength not decrease, but it became stronger. Even compared with Pompey, they were not much worse. Chapter 165. Keller. Their arrival caused the merchants to exclaim in surprise, which made Levi feel awkward. However, he also expressed his understanding of this, just like the envoy of a certain big boss in the capital in the future who came to a small place. Of course it would cause a shock to the place. Look, Keller is here. At this time, a person said with a shocked face. People looked over and found that a young man was walking towards this side under the protection of a group of people. At least half of the people, including Camillus, went to meet him. Everyone was very excited. If it weren't for this person's support, everyone might have to drink the northwest wind in the future. This is the real parent who feeds and clothes. Keller greeted the people around him with a smile, and there was no trace of aristocratic pride at all, which made the people around him even more excited. Hypocrite. Levi cursed inwardly. He remembered that Keller's reputation was quite bad. Not only was he extremely lustful, but he was also arrogant to the bone, but he rarely showed it in front of others. At this time, Keller noticed Amelia in the crowd, and his eyes lit up. He didn't expect that there was such a sunny young girl here. He walked forward and stretched out his right hand. Hello, my name is Keller. May I know your name, beautiful lady? Keller said politely. Camillus was almost dizzy with excitement. How could it be possible that Keller actually fell in love with his daughter? How many lifetimes of blessing did he have? Amelia was embarrassed. The man's eyes were so burning that she had a bad feeling. She glanced at Hanan beside her, but found that his face was pale and trembling all over. He even lowered his head and didn't dare to look at her. Hanan, what's wrong with you? Amelia asked. He seems to be a little uncomfortable. Why don't you let him go back and rest first? Keller looked disdainful. How could a foreigner like him dare to offend a great Roman noble like him? If he offended him, his whole family could be killed in a snap. Hanan was so nervous that he couldn't speak. This man was the son of one of the most powerful people in the entire Mediterranean. Why did he fall in love with Amelia? Go away. My daughter has nothing to do with you. Camillus walked over and said, without any sign of trying to win him over. He then called the guards to drive him away. Hanan left without much resistance. Amelia looked desperate. Didn't he say he liked her before? Couldn't he see that this man was interested in her? How could he be like this? Respected, great Keller, my name is Camillus, and this is my daughter Amelia. I have admired the Metellus family since I was a child. It is our honor to meet you, Camillus said with a smile. I am also very happy to meet you. Let's go in together, Keller said with a smile. It would be good to deal with his father for the time being. So Camillus walked in with Keller in the envious eyes of everyone. This guy is really lucky. I didn't expect Killer to fall in love with his daughter. That's right, if I had known this, I would have brought my daughter here. Although I don't have a daughter, my sister-in-law is also very beautiful. Unlike everyone else who was full of envy, Amelia looked distraught. Why did he leave? Why did he leave? Last time he said he would love her forever, but a man scared him away. This is really ridiculous. Master, don't be sad because of that scumbag. At least we know his true face. Little Pepper comforted her. Levi watched all this with a sigh on his face, but this was at least better than finding out his true face after falling in love with him. At this time, a man walked out of the hall and asked Amelia to follow him in. Amelia finally walked in with a wooden face. Levi's eyes froze slightly, and it seemed that he had to help her. At this time, there was another exclamation from the crowd. Who is coming again? It's Levi's messenger. It's actually his messenger. If there is anyone who has the strongest power in Africa, then it must be Levi. Not only was he appointed the governor of Africa, but he also has garrisons in Africa and is the protector of many cities. He is a real local tyrant. But it seems that it is just a slave. Even if it is a slave, it is quite extraordinary. Soon a group of people came to greet him. Levi looked at the slave carefully and found that he seemed familiar, but he couldn't remember his name. The slave looked high-spirited and seemed to enjoy the flattery of the people around him. Levi cursed inwardly, as if he was not so majestic at ordinary times. Unexpectedly, he was outdone by his slave, so everyone surrounded the slave and walked in. Now almost everyone has entered the synagogue. Levi took a look and was about to sneak in to see the situation, but was stopped by the captain of the guard. Wait, where are you going? I have something to do and need to go to the bathroom. Levi knew that he couldn't say that he could sneak into the synagogue, otherwise he would be scolded. Really? Then go and come back quickly. You'd better not think about running away. The master asked me to keep an eye on you, the captain of the guard said viciously. Levi couldn't help rolling his eyes. That damn miser. What he didn't know was that not long after he left, a team of guards came over. One of the guards seemed to be very familiar with the captain of the guard. As soon as they met, they became brothers. The captain of the guard waited for Levi for a long time, but there was no sign of him. Did he get the news? The guard said. No way. I didn't tell anyone about this, the captain of the guard said quietly. After Levi got up, he quietly returned and put some money under Zhongshan's pillow. Then he called his good friend. He not only wanted to ruin Levi's reputation, but also put him in jail. I think I saw him sneaking into the hall. At this time, a guard said. What did you say? Are you sure you didn't see it wrong? Absolutely. This guy is really bold. Let's go and catch him in front of everyone. The captain of the guard thought maliciously. If he was caught in front of so many big shots, Levi would soon become famous in Utica. But he'd better not show up, otherwise he would offend the head of the family, who now seems to be very valued by the Metellus family. After Levi sneaked into the hall, he found a corner and hid quietly. Since Governor Cerebio had not arrived yet, the meeting had not been held yet. The merchants were clearly divided into several areas, the two largest of which were Levi's slaves and Keller's 2 areas. Chapter 166 A Hero Saves a Beauty. This represents the alternation of the old and new forces in Africa, but the addition of the Metellus family has led to some changes. At this time, Demetrius was confused. What did he see? That person was standing there. This was unlikely, but that person really looked like him. He left his seat and came to Levi's side. Several of his new friends followed him. They looked at Levi with doubts. Could this person have anything to do with Demetrius? When he came to Levi, he was very sure that he was not mistaken. The expression was exactly the same. You are here. Seeing Demetrius coming over here, Levi had no intention of hiding. Why are you here? Demetrius spoke respectfully and unconsciously used honorifics. Demetrius' friends were even more confused. Who was this little guard? He actually made Demetrius so respectful. Me. Levi looked annoyed. Could it be that he was tied here? I heard you were kidnapped, Demetrius whispered to ensure that only 2 people could hear it. Fake. This is absolutely fake news. I came here incognito. The kidnapped person is my VIP. Remember, don't spread rumors. If you spread rumors 500 times, you will go to jail, Levi said viciously. His eyes were extremely fierce. This incident was definitely his black history, and he must cover it up. Moreover, he wanted to have a triumphal parade. How could he have a triumphal parade if he was kidnapped? I understand, Demetrius said hurriedly, but he didn't quite understand when he would go to jail for spreading rumors 500 times. His friend's eyes were about to pop out. This little guard was so powerful that he dared to speak to Demetrius so fiercely. You have to know that this person is Pompey's chief steward. Except for the governor, no one in Utica dared to offend him. Who are you? One of his friends asked cautiously. Don't ask if you shouldn't ask, Levi said unhappily. His friend curled his lips and had to close his mouth helplessly. Demetrius found that Levi had been staring at Amelia, and Amelia was sitting with Keller. He originally thought that Levi's target was Keller, but soon he knew that he was wrong. Levi was indeed staring at Amelia. Keller seemed to be touching Amelia, and Amelia's face was very bad. Levi was also very angry. Demetrius asked quietly, "Are you attracted to her? What are you thinking?" "She saved my life," Levi said with a strange look. "Saved your life?" Demetrius looked strange. "I said it wrong. She is a good girl." Levi quickly changed his words. If he said that she saved his life, then the kidnapping would also be exposed. "Really?" Demetrius looked unconvinced. "Whether you believe it or not, I believe it anyway," Levi thought. The hall was filled with noise. At this moment, a loud slap was heard in the hall. The whole hall was quiet for a moment, and everyone looked over. They found that Keller was covering his left face and looking at Amelia in shock. The people around him seemed to be stunned. Keller did not expect that this woman would have such a strong personality. His face immediately darkened. I'm sorry, she didn't mean it." Camillus was almost scared to tears. How could things turn out like this? "Very good. You are very good," Keller said with a gloomy face, obviously hating to the extreme. "You bitch. You dare to attack Keller. You are simply courting death. Someone come and tell them to get rid of them all." At this time, a businessman suddenly jumped out and said, "It's too easy to drive them out. They should be kicked out. I remember that he seems to have evaded taxes. I will report him to the governor in person. I also want to report that he colluded with Domitius. He once provided food to Domitius. He should be listed as a public enemy of Rome. His whole family should be killed, and their property should be confiscated." "That's right, list them as public enemies of the state." For a moment, the crowd was excited. The merchants who had just been brothers and sisters with Camillus turned against him in an instant, exposing all his dark history, and even wanted to force him into a dead end. Camillus was scared and pale. They actually wanted to label him as a public enemy of the state. What should he do? Even Amelia was pale. Did she cause a big trouble for her father? I'm so sorry just now. My daughter really didn't mean it. I apologize to you on her behalf. She is still young. Come to me if you have anything. Just let her go," Camillus said in panic. "What are you doing? How can a group of big men like you bully a weak woman?" At this time, little Pepper also stood up and said, "Weak women are definitely not a reason to attack Mr. Keller. Come on, beat them out," a very fat businessman said, and then he took the lead and rushed towards Amelia. Keller looked at all this with a sneer on his face, and had no intention of stopping it. It was just a joke. But he didn't expect that she would dare to lose his face like this. Let them know the consequences of offending the Metellus family. Seeing that a punch was about to hit Amelia, Amelia was frightened and closed her eyes tightly. But after a long time, she didn't feel any pain, but heard a scream. She opened her eyes and found a familiar figure standing in front of him. The fat man fell to the ground, holding his stomach, and lost his voice in pain. "Who allowed you to treat two beautiful ladies like this?" Levi said with a smile. "It turned out to be him." "Why is he here?" Amelia looked at this figure infatuatedly. Hannon, who had been pursuing her, was so scared that he ran away after seeing Keller. Unexpectedly, he actually came up to help. Didn't he know who he had offended? That was the son of the former Roman consul, the top noble in Rome. Keller also looked at him in doubt. How could it be him? Shouldn't he be commanding his 6 legions in the south? But looking at Demetrius following behind him, he quickly confirmed the identity of this person. Yes, it was him. "Who are you? How dare you stop us from avenging Prince Keller?" a businessman shouted loudly. "Who am I?" Just ask him and you'll know. Levi pointed at Keller and said. The businessman looked at Keller, but Keller was slow to speak, and he didn't dare to ask. You shouldn't have come, Amelia said. It's a small matter, don't mind it too much. Levi said, thank you very much for the reward from Tandy Fenuatai. Chapter 167 Falling Out. Amelia smiled bitterly. This was no small matter. Even if you are a Roman, this person cannot be easily offended. At this moment, several guards suddenly rushed in. Excuse me, everyone. We are trying to catch this thief everywhere. We didn't expect him to sneak in. We are very sorry for the inconvenience caused to you, the captain of the guard said. After the turn of events, he had decided to stand up. Seeing that the Camillus family was about to end, maybe he could take the opportunity to curry favor with Prince Keller. Seeing the apologetic captain of the guard commanding the guards to arrest Levi, Demetrius hurriedly stopped them. Wait, do you know who he is? Demetrius said. Reporting to this lord, we know, he is a merchant who was robbed on the road, a guard of our family, and his name is Gilius, the captain of the guard said with a flattering face. He remembered that the man in front of him seemed to be Pompey's chief steward, a big man who must not be offended. Demetrius couldn't help laughing, but Levi looked at him strangely. Was it necessary to jump like that? If you didn't jump like that, maybe you still had a chance to survive. But you love to show off so much. Even if I want to protect you, it's not easy. It turns out to be just a thief. I thought he was some big shot. Hurry up and catch him. The merchants shouted at the guards. I'm sorry, it's my fault. I believe you are wronged, Amelia said. Woo woo woo. Now we are miserable. Little Pepper started crying. Levi smiled bitterly. Was it necessary to be so separated from each other? Seeing that the guards were about to arrest Levi, Demetrius had no intention of stopping him, but just watched the joke from the side. Stop it, who allowed you to arrest people? At this moment, a panicked voice came from the door of the synagogue. Everyone looked over and found that the governor of Africa, Sarabio, was looking at them angrily. He trotted to Levi and said in a panic, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. Everyone was shocked. This was the governor of Africa. How could he be so afraid of the young man? Your men need to be disciplined, Levi said. That's right, these people should be disciplined. Sarabio looked at the guards fiercely and said, Who are you? Do you know he is a thief? The captain of the guard said cautiously at this time. Hearing this, Sarabio was furious. Pa! He slapped the captain of the guard hard. Do you know who he is? He is Lucius Pausius Levi, the commander of the 6 Roman legions and the protector of Utica. You dared to slander him as a thief. You are simply courting death, Sarabio said angrily. Hearing this, many people's eyes almost popped out of their heads in shock. He is Levi. How is this possible? Isn't he commanding the legions in the south? You are Levi. How is that possible? Said Little Pepper. Yes, I am the bad guy you are talking about, Levi said with a smirk. Ah, Little Pepper couldn't help but cover her mouth. She remembered that she had said a lot of bad things about Levi, and she said them in front of him. What should I do? Don't worry, since you have taken care of me, let's forget about these things, Levi said with a smile. You provided me with great help when I was on a secret visit. Tell me your wish and I will try my best to satisfy you, Levi said to Amelia. Is this true? Before Amelia could answer, the fat man said it first. This is really too dreamy. I didn't expect that her daughter just saved a person, that is, Levi, the commander of the 6 Roman legions and the appointer of the governor of Africa. I'm not asking you. Levi poured a basin of cold water on the fat man, choking him. Tell me your wish, Levi said. Everyone looked at Amelia with envy. This was a wish that Levi had promised. Whether it was power, status or money, it was all within reach. If you fulfill this wish, will we be even? Amelia smiled slightly. Levi suddenly had a bad feeling. It can be understood in this way. Then I will keep this wish for the time being, Amelia said with a smile. Levi was speechless for a while, and could only agree. The fat man gave a thumbs up to his daughter's cleverness. His daughter was really good. Maybe they could gain greater benefits from it. At this time, Levi looked at the guards with disgust, and then said, Take them all away and deal with them as they should. Soon, the guards of the synagogue took them all away and accepted the sanctions of Roman law. It was a serious crime to frame a Roman general. If he didn't die, the word Levi would be written backwards. Not long after, someone sent a big red cloak. Levi put on the red cloak and he became the general of 6 Roman legions again. Keller, I hope you won't harass her in the future, Levi said. After all, she was his savior, so he had to help her, even if she didn't ask for it. No one can insult the Metellus family without punishment, Keller said without giving in. So your Metellus family is destined to be my enemy, Levi said. I don't know why the general said that, Keller said. You adopted Scipio's grandson. Don't you know what the relationship between Scipio and me is? Isn't this going against me? Levi said coldly. I think you misunderstood. Our friendship with the Scipio family has lasted for more than 100 years. My father adopted his grandson, not because of you, the general. Keller smiled disdainfully. Levi looked at him deeply. Was he showing off the friendship between their nobles? But it was really annoying. Often touching a noble would implicate a large group of nobles. If you dare to touch her, I guarantee that you will not be able to leave Africa alive, Levi said. Keller's face changed drastically. You are threatening me. I am just stating a fact, Levi said coldly. Very good. Our Metellus family will remember your friendship, Keller said with a sneer. Levi couldn't help laughing. These nobles were really interesting. They were only allowed to do things that were not good for others, but not for others to do things that were not good for them. They were all double-standard dogs. Now let him teach these double-standard dogs a lesson. You can live in my house for the next few days, Levi said to Amelia and the others. Chapter 168 Cleansing. Is this true? That's really great, Amelia couldn't help but said excitedly, but Pepper quietly tugged at her skirt. Master, you better be reserved. Even if you want to send someone to your door, don't show it so obviously. Cerabio, you are really too careless in this bidding, Levi said. What's wrong? Cerabio said with a confused look on his face. Is there any omission in his work? I found some supporters of Marius and Cinna among these people, and they are likely to support Domitius's actions against Rome. We must list them as public enemies of Rome, confiscate their property, deprive their children of citizenship, and reduce them to slaves. Levi's words made the whole venue feel a little chilly. What happened in Rome? Everyone here knows clearly. Does he want what happened in Rome to happen again in Africa? Several businessmen have collapsed on the ground in fear. Even those Roman nobles and wealthy families have been killed. So many people. What are they? Levi, you dare? Keller said angrily. Levi's goal was very clear. That was the people left by the Scipio family. Now these people would be used by their family. How could he sit back and watch them being eradicated by Levi? Levi sneered. Keller, what do you mean? Are you going to protect the supporters of Marius and Cinna? They are not supporters of Marius and Cinna. They are all followers of the Scipio family. You are taking the opportunity to avenge your personal grudges and abuse your power for personal gain, Keller said angrily. Scipio supported Marius and Cinna at the beginning, so there is no difference between them, Levi said coldly. The development of a family is inseparable from a lot of money. Africa provided them with too much funds. As long as the hands and feet of these Scipio families were cut off, the Scipio family would suffer a heavy blow. In this way, even if they come back, their strength will certainly be much worse than before. I will accuse you to Sulla, Keller said. It's up to you, Levi said disdainfully. It is impossible to say that Sulla has any good feelings towards the Scipio family. If it were not for the great reputation of the Scipio family, how could Sulla tolerate Nasica's exile? As for Levi's actions in Africa, he probably turned a blind eye, or even encouraged them in his heart. Take those merchants away for careful interrogation, and we will talk about the bidding of the tax farmers in a few days. Levi pointed at the merchants who collapsed on the ground and said, Please don't. We have nothing to do with the Scipio family. Some merchants begged, but Levi ignored them. Since you have chosen this thorny road, don't show mercy to the enemy. Cerabio was also scared and sweated. If it weren't for her daughter, he would have been one of them. After Levi left, the whole hall was wailing. They knew that Africa would usher in a bloody storm. In fact, their guess was correct. After returning, Levi directly listed some people who had close ties with the Scipio family as public enemies of the state. Confiscate their property, deprive them of their citizenship, degrade them to slaves, and report the matter to Sulla. The whole of Africa was a bloody storm. trembling under Levi's fierce reputation. In Levi's temporary mansion, Levi was talking to Cerebio, and Amelia was pouring wine for them. Since she was invited to enter Levi's mansion, she has become more and more familiar with Levi, and took the initiative to serve him wine and water. This made Levi very satisfied. After all, no man doesn't like a little beauty to serve him. It's just that Amelia is a little young. It seems that she is only 15 years old this year, and it's really hard to do it. You have lost weight again recently, Levi said meaningfully. Cerebio almost burst into tears. Who knows his own suffering? Thinking about having to satisfy Sempronia's desires every night, he felt a kind of pain. Let's not talk about this. I heard that you embezzled a lot of money, Levi asked with a cold face. Little Pepper looked at him with contempt. This is really a corrupt official. It's true, but everyone does it, Cerebio said with some embarrassment. Levi didn't expect him to admit it directly, but think about it. After becoming the governor, taking bribes is the ecology of the entire officialdom. It is abnormal to be an honest official. It is a bit strange for him to blame Cerebio like this. Remember not to be caught. Keller may cause trouble for you, Levi said. Just rest assured. Don't forget that I am a lawyer, Cerebio said with a smile. Little Pepper snorted coldly. A pair of corrupt officials. By the way, have Wufa and Zaphros been caught? Levi asked. No, we sent soldiers to search the possible location you mentioned, but we only found Zaphros's body. But Wufa was nowhere to be found, Cerebio said. What a bunch of rubbish. They can't catch such an obvious person, Levi said. Cerebio was embarrassed. I guess he may have encountered the forces left by Domitius, otherwise he would not have escaped our pursuit. Livius nodded. This was possible. If Wufa was not caught, he decided to find a way to personally conquer Germany in the future. If he was alive, he would definitely find a way to escape back to this tribe. He said this more than once on the way to escape. Now the war in Numidia is almost over. I have ordered all the troops to come to Utica to join. Livius said. Are you going back home now? Cerebio said. Yes, I am waiting for Sulla's reply. I want to know if he will allow me to hold a triumphal ceremony. Livius said. I am afraid this possibility is not great. Cerebio said. If you want to hold a triumphal ceremony, only consuls, magistrates, dictators, cavalry commanders or those who have served as these officials are qualified to hold a triumphal ceremony. Cerebio's meaning was very clear. Levi did not have this qualification, even if he won a great victory. Moreover, Livius also had political enemies in Rome, such as the Metellus family, the family that had a good relationship with Scipio, and some people who were jealous of him. They would not allow Livius to hold a triumphal ceremony at such a young age. After all, Livius was only 19 years old after the new year. I know, but everything has to be fought for, don't you think? Livius said. Pompey in history did not have these qualifications. He would rather fall out with Sulla, but in the end he still won the qualification to hold a triumphal ceremony. He was no worse than Pompey in any way, so he didn't believe that he could not win the qualification to hold a triumphal ceremony. After Cerebio left, Livius lay quietly on a recliner. At this moment, a fragrant breeze blew, and Amelia stood behind him, gently pinching her shoulders. Chapter 169, Release of Military Power. You don't have to do this, Levi said. I volunteered. Thank you for saving me that day. Amelia said. Didn't you save me too? And I think my life is worth a lot, Levi said. Amelia couldn't help but sneer. Pepper looked at him with disdain. It was the first time she saw someone bragging like that. In the end, he still couldn't beat Amelia. Amelia still insisted on massaging his shoulders. Menenia, come here and give me a leg massage, Levi said with a smile. I won't go. You can serve yourself, you big pervert, Pepper said with a blushing face. Levi shook his head. Seeing that he was easy to talk to, these women began to act unrestrained. But after all, she took care of him when he was injured, so he couldn't blame her. He was really too kind. Levi secretly blamed himself. Time passed day by day, and Levi's 6 legions had gathered in Utica to prepare to return home. After seeing Levi, the legion commanders were very happy. Livius was fine, so their future would not be affected. Plautus was ashamed, and he felt extremely guilty for what happened to his subordinates. Livius reorganized the guards. After this incident, he valued loyalty more. Some slaves and less loyal people were kicked out of the guards. In addition, he also prepared some things related to the triumphal ceremony. He hoped to hold an unusual triumphal ceremony. That is, he would formally appear in front of the Roman people. His soldiers had to take a certain amount of time every month to train the goose steps since they were recruited, so there were many good goose steppers among them. This time he wanted to pick out the good ones and then officially appear at the triumphal ceremony. He wanted to make a splash. After a period of training, Sulla's envoy finally arrived. Livius led the legion commanders to welcome Sulla's envoy very enthusiastically, who was actually their old friend Hadrianus. Levi hugged Hadrianus warmly and said, "I haven't seen you for such a long time. You seem to be doing better and better." Hadrianus smiled bitterly and said, "I am just an errand boy. How can I compare with the general? As long as you know the content of my message, don't think of killing me." "I am grateful." Everyone returned to the big tent. Levi had prepared a banquet for him. After a few drinks, they got down to business. "The dictator Sulla is very satisfied with your record, General. He claims that you are an extremely good commander and worthy of the title of the Twin Stars of Rome." Hadrianus praised. Of course, defeating 100 war elephants, 15,000 cavalry, and 50,000 infantry in one battle is a record that Marius did not achieve back then. Gato boasted for Levi. "Pompey is probably not as good as my general." Bilius also joined the army of flattery. Levi shook his head. "Don't say that. Pompey is my good friend. It's not good to say that." Pompey's ability to command battles is still there, but Levi thinks that he is definitely better than him. The reason is that there are too many time travelers who are too shameless. Not to mention Pompey, even Hannibal, Alexander, and Caesar combined may not be the opponent of the time travelers who are full of cheats. Hadrianus's mouth twitched. "These people are really good at bragging behind closed doors. Then can I have a triumphal ceremony?" Levi asked with a smile. The atmosphere of the banquet suddenly became cold. Everyone stared at Hadrianus. They all knew that according to Roman law, Levi was not qualified to have a triumphal ceremony. But after such a great victory, how could they be willing if they could not have a triumphal ceremony? This. Hadrianus felt that he was sweating. "What do you mean?" "Can't you?" Geta asked. Levi stared at Hadrianus coldly. "It seems that history has not changed after all. You know, according to Roman law, only consuls, praetors, dictators, cavalry commanders and those who have held these positions can hold triumphal ceremonies. So I hope you can understand." Hadrianus said awkwardly, "According to Roman law, there should not be a lifelong dictator." At this time, Liberius said. Hearing this, everyone's face changed drastically. "What are you talking about? Sulla was elected as a lifelong dictator by the citizens' assembly," Hadrianus said angrily. "Okay, Liberius, don't say such things again in the future," Levi said. It would be bad if such words reached Sulla's ears. Liberius snorted coldly and stopped talking. Hadrianus took a long breath, and then said, "As compensation, Sulla, the dictator, can acquiesce to what you did in Africa." "Anything else?" "Say it all at once," Levi asked, with a dangerous light in his eyes. "A few days ago, Julius sent someone to deliver a letter to him, telling him that Rome had passed some laws that were very unfriendly to him. This made him feel chilled. He didn't expect that he was fighting heroically for Sulla in Africa, and Sulla stabbed him hard in the back. Your army must be disbanded here and dispersed back to Rome, Hadrianus said. It's really too much. Why don't we rebel? At this time, a legionary commander said, Rebel, we should join forces with Domitius and others, and then march to Rome. Looking at the angry legionary commanders, Hadrianus was terrified. Don't do this. Will they kill me as a sacrifice? Levi waved his hand lightly, and the legionary commanders calmed down. Are there any more? Levi asked coldly. No more, Hadrianus said with cold sweat on his forehead. Are you sure it's really gone? Levi asked. Really gone? Why do I remember that Sulla promulgated a law that no family's guards can be half a legion, and those who violate it will be treated as enemies of the state. Levi said coldly. The legionary commanders were in an uproar. There was such a thing. Wouldn't it mean that many of them would be laid off? Levi's family guards were well known, and this was clearly a law targeting Levi. This Sulla has already thought of compensation for you. Sulla will allocate a lot of land for you, and you can farm there, Hadrianus said with sweat on his forehead. Asshole. At this time, a legion commander stepped forward and kicked him to the ground, then drew his dagger and pointed it at him. Do you want to die? How dare you treat the head of the family like this? This has nothing to do with me. This is all the idea of the dictator. Hadrianus shouted in injustice. Let him go. Levi said lightly. Head of the family, we can't let him get away with it so easily. The legion commander said. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170 Return to Rome. Is what I said useless? Levi said. The legion commander smiled embarrassedly and quickly let go of Hadrianus, giving him a threatening look. Levi frowned slightly. When did his men become such arrogant and brave generals? It seemed that the continuous victories gave them great confidence, and many things that should not be said were said. I can't agree to Sulla's decision, but there is one thing, that is, the triumphal ceremony must be held. Levi thought for a while and said. The generals were in a turmoil again, but were stopped by Levi. He understood Sulla's worries very well. Marius and Sulla's march to Rome had proved the disadvantages of privately owning an army. Moreover, Capua was too close to Rome. Levi would not feel at ease with so many troops. As for the triumphal ceremony, Levi was determined to win it. The triumphal ceremony was the highest honor of many Romans in their lives. No matter who it was, they would fight hard for it. Didn't he come to Africa to fight so hard just for the triumphal ceremony? Hadrianus breathed a sigh of relief, but soon looked embarrassed again. This is not in line with the law. In fact, it was not only Sulla who opposed Levi's triumphal procession. Many dignitaries were also very sensitive to this. Levi was only 19 years old after the beginning of spring. A 19-year-old boy was going to have a triumphal procession, which made those Roman dignitaries jealous to the point of madness. Levi narrowed his eyes. I don't think I have done anything wrong to Sulla, and I have done great things for him in Africa. But what about Sulla? He stabbed me in the back. And Sulla is not young anymore. He is almost 60 this year. How many years can Sulla live? He has children, and he must consider his children in the future. He is like the setting sun, and I am the rising sun in the early morning. You say he is a dying old man. Why should he go against a young man like me who has a bright future? Listening to Levi's sarcastic words, everyone was shocked. Is this the Levi they know? They remembered that although Levi was not loyal, he was at least very polite and rarely said such sarcastic words. Hadrianus was also trembling with anger. How could he say that about Sulla? Levi spread his hands. There was no other way. Pompey won the triumph with these words. Tell Sulla my original words without changing a word. I think Sulla will make a wise choice, Levi said. There was no other way. This world bullies honest people. If you don't resist at all, people may want to do something to you. Okay, I'll go back now. No need to see you off. Sulla's mansion in Rome. This damn bastard. How could he say such a thing? Sulla said angrily. It's really too much. Even Metella said that she always thought Levi was a very polite young man, but she didn't expect him to say such arrogant words. Hadrianus looked at Sulla cautiously. He knew that Levi was going to be unlucky. Now Sulla's reputation in Rome is like that of a demon king, which can almost stop children from crying at night. How Sulla will deal with Levi. This made him very much look forward to it. In that case, let him hold a triumphal ceremony. Sulla said. How is this possible? Hadrianus couldn't help but open his mouth wide, as if a duck egg could be stuffed in. How could you let Levi go like this? You are the murderous devil of Rome? He insulted you. Do you have any other questions? Seeing Hadrianus's look, Sulla asked dissatisfiedly. No. Then why don't you hurry to Africa? Hadrianus could only leave here with a depressed face. Why did you agree to hold a triumphal ceremony for him? He said such excessive words. Metella said angrily. He is right, I did stab him in the back. Sulla shook his head and said, and many people in Rome are very dissatisfied with my election as a lifelong dictator. If he really marches into Rome, many people, including my subordinates, will support him. Metella looked at Sulla with wide eyes, but Sulla had a bitter smile on his face. Only he could feel the turbulent undercurrent beneath the calm surface of Rome. The consequences of being a lifelong dictator in a country like Rome that has practiced a republic for hundreds of years are terrible. He will face opposition from the whole country. I understand, Metella said. In the military camp of Livius in Attica, after learning the news brought by Hadrianus, the generals cheered. Some people were very worried. After all, they had offended Sulla, and they didn't know whether Sulla would deal with Livius secretly. Livius didn't care much. Sulla could tolerate Pompey, so he should be able to tolerate him. He disbanded the army in Utica and ordered them to return home by ship, and then some of them would assemble outside Rome. According to Roman law, no one could lead an army into the Italian mainland from the Rubicon River in the north to the Strait of Messina in the south without the consent of the Senate. Livius took a boat to Cuma, and then lived directly outside Rome instead of entering Rome directly, because entering Rome now means giving up the right to hold a triumphal ceremony. Only after the triumphal ceremony can he enter and leave Rome at will. In addition, he had two more burdens. Aemilia and Pepper followed him to Rome. In a manor outside Rome, as soon as she saw him, Cybele rushed up to him with passion, hanging on Levi's body. Master, you are so great. We all know your record in Africa. Those Roman bitches are crazy. After that, she gave him a hot kiss, and kept twisting in Levi's arms, making Levi feel that his body was about to explode. Levi slapped her indescribable thing hard, and this capital was really getting more and more sufficient. Do you miss me? I think about it every day. Cybele threw a coquettish eye, and then hugged him and didn't want to let go. Julia hugged little Levi and looked at Levi from behind. Although they were separated for less than 2 months, she felt like she was living a year. At this time, she found Aemilia and Pepper standing behind Levi. This made her heart jump, and Julia could be said to have seen countless people. She soon discovered that the young girl standing in front of her was a well-educated rich girl, and the ones behind her should be her slaves. Why did they follow Levi here? Did Levi like them? Although she was a little depressed, she was prepared. No Roman noble or knight would marry a slave, even if she was a Roman citizen, but in their eyes, her identity was no different from a slave. If Levi married them, he would become the laughingstock of the whole of Rome. The greater Levi's achievements, the more they would use this to attack Levi. Julia was about to step forward and say to Levi, Levi, who are they, them? Levi suddenly felt like he was caught in adultery. Chapter 171 Triumphal Parade. Fortunately, he was thick-skinned enough to tell them everything about his relationship with them. After hearing about Levi's experience, Julia and others were so worried that their eyes were red and they almost cried. In the end, it was Levi who kept comforting them that their emotions stabilized. Thank you for saving Levi. You are always welcome here, Julia said meaningfully. Thank you so much. We still have to rely on Levi's protection during this period, Aemilia said, and then looked at Levi with resentment. She didn't expect him to be such a person. Levi smiled awkwardly. In fact, he was still quite restrained. Those Roman knights and nobles were much more licentious than him. Several people had dinner together, did some unspeakable things at night, and devoted themselves to the preparations for the triumphal ceremony the next day. Perhaps Sulla and the Senate were extremely dissatisfied with him and only gave him 1 day to prepare, but this time was enough. On the 3rd day, the sky was just getting light. A large number of people had gathered in the Mars Square outside the city. Triumphal processions are divided into large and small ones. All small triumphal processions are conducted on foot or on horseback. Livy held a large triumphal procession, which started from the Forum of Mars, the god of war, outside the city and ended with a parade to the god Jupiter on Capitoline Hill to offer sacrifices. Finally, a prisoner of war was killed to offer sacrifices to the gods. This ritual originated from the Etruscans who had fought against the Romans. Only those who won a decisive victory over foreign enemies and killed more than 5,000 enemies, and brought back at least 1 team of prisoners, were eligible to hold a triumphal procession. The person who held the procession must have the supreme command. There were actually quite a few triumphal processes held during the Republic era, from 220 BC to 70 BC. A total of 100 triumphal processes were held, with 2 triumphal processes held basically every 3 years. The reason why Livy's triumphal procession was so eye-catching was that he was young, only 19 years old, and secondly, he did not have the supreme command. It was precisely because of all the controversies that it attracted many people to come and watch. Julia and Cybele looked at Levi with excitement. At this time, Levi was wearing a red cloak and sitting in a gilded carriage pulled by 4 white horses. Behind him were soldiers ready to go, and in front of him were some prisoners of war and captured items. Some of the war elephants caused many people to scream. Almost everyone in Rome had heard of war elephants, but very few had actually seen them. I didn't expect Levi to capture so many war elephants at once. Levi was in high spirits. Today would definitely be a unique triumphal ceremony. It can begin, a senator said with a dark face. Levi didn't care on the surface, but he was secretly alert in his heart. It seemed that many people were dissatisfied with him. Maybe he should keep a low profile for a while. A loud military bugle sounded, and the prisoner queue in the front row slowly moved forward. Iabas followed a Roman soldier holding a wooden sign with a dark face. The wooden sign of the Roman soldier wrote his identity, King of Numidia. In addition, his wife and children were all in the prisoner queue. Following them were some Numidian nobles, tribal chieftains, some soldiers, war elephants, expensive spoils of war, and so on. Looking at Iabas and those Numidian nobles, the Roman civilians cheered and booed in various ways. As for the war elephants and lions, they screamed in various ways. Near the city gate, the 3 sisters Claudia were watching all this in the crowd. 2 of them were dressed in gorgeous clothes, and the other was wearing the clothes of a Vestal Virgin. The other spectators looked at the Vestal Virgin in awe and automatically made room for them. Sister, look at Levi. He is young and handsome, and he is so good at fighting. It would be great if he could marry me, Claudia said with a crazy look on her face. It's a pity that he doesn't like us. The elder Claudia also had a face full of resentment. They showed it so obviously at the beginning, but Levi was still unmoved. It was obvious that he refused. It doesn't matter. If he doesn't want to marry us, can we be his lovers? I believe he won't object. Claudia smiled and said, Be careful. There are so many people here. Don't let anyone hear you. And you are all engaged. Can't you be more solemn? Little Claudia said speechlessly. I know. At this time, Livius's carriage happened to pass by. When he saw Claudia and her sisters, he smiled and greeted them, which caused Claudia and her sister to cheer. Livius was so scared that he quickly turned his face away. Pompey looked at all this with jealousy. He and Livius were both listed as the twin stars of Rome, but Livius' achievements far exceeded his. Not only did he defeat more enemy troops than him, but he also won the honor of triumph at the age of 19. He was also praised by Philo, the director of Plato's Garden, as the only philosopher in Rome. He was simply a man of both civil and military skills. Pompey was madly pursuing honor all his life. In order to obtain the honor of triumph, he did not hesitate to fall out with Sulla. Later, in order to command the army alone to expedition to the east, he tore his face with Lucullus. After Caesar achieved greater honor, he later chose to go to war with Caesar. This shows how strong his jealousy was. At this time, Pompey could no longer hide his jealousy. He did not want to be suppressed by Levi, and he must make his honor surpass Levi. Do you know what I heard in the crowd just now? Some people say that Levi is the brightest of the Roman twin stars. He is not afraid of power and dares to contradict Sulla. I don't know when. Crassus squeezed over with several guards and said, Are you here to laugh at me? Pompey stared at him coldly. Crassus's provocation was too obvious, and anyone could hear it. Crassus sneered and stopped talking. Some things are enough to mention, and it is not good to say too much. Since the conquest of Rome, Crassus has bought too many expensive assets in Rome at a low price. This made his strength soar. But what made him depressed was that Levi bought more assets than him because Levi was richer. Many of the assets he was interested in were intercepted by Levi, which made him hate it. Therefore, after seeing Pompey, he couldn't help but provoke him. The team of captives and spoils finally passed by them. Levi spotted Pompey and Crassus in the crowd. He waved to them, and Pompey tried to squeeze out a difficult smile. Crassus showed a harmless smile and blew loudly to Levi. At this moment, Pompey and Crassus suddenly felt that the surroundings had become quiet, leaving only a neat sound of footsteps. They looked back and the first thing they saw was 3 officers holding military flags. Behind them, rows of soldiers wearing silver masks walked towards the side with neat and strange steps. Their steps were sonorous and powerful, and their feet were parallel to the ground when they marched, and then they landed almost at the same time, forming a heavy sound of stomping on the ground. Thank you very much for the reward from the Queen. Chapter 172. Admiral. Sharp spears, the collision of armor and armor, the neat stomping of the ground, and the slogans of the centurions formed a whole. The whole team was like one person, which shocked Pompey and Crassus. How did Levi do this? As a general, they certainly knew how important this was. Could it be that Levi was also a master of military tactics? They had heard that Levi changed his formation before attacking the Lucanians. At first, they didn't quite believe it, but now it seemed to be true. Not only him, but also the Roman citizens were extremely shocked. They had seen triumphal ceremonies more than once or twice, but never had such a neat and handsome team passed by them. Invincible army, really invincible army, someone in the crowd shouted loudly. Hearing this, some people echoed that with such military discipline, it was no wonder that Levi's army was invincible and won the honor of triumphal ceremony. At the age of 19, Pompey's face was as black as charcoal, and his fists were clenched so tightly that even the blue veins were exposed. This boy really can't be underestimated, Crassus also said with a look of shock. If he was a little dissatisfied with Levi's record before, at least he is convinced now. At least he can never train such an army. Pompey snorted coldly and turned away. The lively day finally passed, and the next day Sulla invited Levi to his home again. After a few pleasantries, Sulla said, I know you are very dissatisfied with me, but I hope you can understand. I am not targeting you deliberately. One person has so many troops, which poses a great threat to Rome. I understand, and you have compensated me. Levi said. He knew that it was actually against the rules for him to hold a triumphal ceremony, but Sulla's lifelong consul was even more against the rules, and neither of them should say anything. Only in Rome did he dare to have so many guards. If he was in an imperial country, he would not dare to do so. This matter is over. Cheers to our reconciliation, Sulla said. Cheers. After talking, the atmosphere between the two was much better. Sulla actually valued Livy very much, and Livy was unwilling to make the relationship with Sulla too stiff. Judging from Sulla's performance, he was more like an ideal politician. He was not as greedy for power as Caesar, but kept strengthening the power of the Senate, hoping that the Republic could continue longer. I heard that you plan to allocate land to my soldiers. How do you plan to settle them? Livy asked. I have set up several colonial cities, and you can settle your soldiers there. Sulla said, there are several types of Roman cities, namely colonial cities, autonomous cities, and foreign cities. Among them, colonial cities have the highest status, because colonial cities are often composed of Roman veterans, and they all have full Roman citizenship. Unlike some people in later generations who think that colonies have a low status, this is completely different from the colonies of later generations. Choose Pompeii and Praenest, Livy said. One of these two cities is very close to Capua, and the other is a city he conquered. They are both places he is very familiar with, and they are not far from Rome. More importantly, the soldiers live in a concentrated area, which is conducive to his influence, so that his influence can extend from Capua to these two cities. Okay, no problem, Sulla said with a smile. Now that the war is over, what are your plans next? Levi pondered for a while. In fact, he had also considered this matter. According to Roman law, 30 is the minimum age for entering politics. He is only 19 years old this year, so he has no hope of entering politics. The only way left is to join the army. As for going outside Italy, he is not interested at all. If possible, he will try to stay not far from Capua. If possible, I hope to serve as the governor of Campania, Levi said. Sulla frowned. To be honest, It was because of Levi's age. It was against the rules to serve as the governor of a region at such a young age. No problem, but in the end, Sulla agreed. Let me ask you something. Are you interested in moving the Capua Academy to Rome? Sulla said. Move to Rome? Why? Levi asked. Rome is the center of the Mediterranean. This is the capital of the Mediterranean. There should be a famous academy here, Sulla said. Although many nobles were very unhappy with Levi, they still liked that Levi could surpass the Greeks in philosophy. It would be even better if Rome could also have a famous academy in the Mediterranean. Not interested. This is such a pity. Sulla looked regretful. Has your academy made any breakthrough in medicine? Levi glanced at Sulla. Was it because his condition got worse again? In fact, he guessed correctly. Sulla didn't know that he had a tumor in his stomach. However, his body often ulcerated, and a large number of parasites would grow in the ulcerated parts. This made him extremely painful. There were often a large number of people who took care of him day and night to help him remove those parasites. He went to many people for treatment, including Levi, but no one could cure him. I haven't paid attention to this for a long time. Levi thought for a while and said. Sulla suddenly had an urge to kill. How could you not pay attention to it? You are a philosopher that even Philo pays attention to. You should focus your energy on the academy. You established the Capua Academy to promote the development of medicine, right? Sulla said. Levi nodded. That was true, and he would find some famous doctors to treat himself and his family. But if you want to develop medicine, you need a lot of excellent doctors to gather together, and you need a lot of money, and only Rome has this condition. The best doctors in the entire Mediterranean are in Rome, and Rome is the richest city in the entire Mediterranean, Sulla said. Levi admitted that he was right. No place was as rich as Rome, and the wealth of the entire Mediterranean was gathering in Rome. Wherever there was a good doctor, as long as Rome gave an order, the doctor had to go to Rome. If you want to develop medical skills quickly, there is no better place than Rome. I have decided to establish a school in Rome, mainly in medicine. I hope you can send people to support me, and it would be best if you can provide them with some guidance, Sulla said. Okay then. Levi thought about it and said, he didn't expect Sulla to make such a big decision. Anyway, it was not a big deal, just providing some manpower. Seeing that Levi agreed, Sulla nodded with satisfaction. With Levi joining, the prospects of the Roman school were very promising. The two had a happy meal, and then Levi left. Chapter 173 Orphans and the Holy Church. Since the castle of the Vatican has not been built yet, Levi is still living in a villa on Capitoline Hill. Next, he found his legion commander and arranged the resettlement of the soldiers. The other soldiers were easy to deal with, but the soldiers of the 1st and 2nd legions of Capua were the ones who gave him the most headache. Some of these soldiers were his retainers, while others only signed a 5-year contract. Fortunately, due to the habit of his previous life, he added in the contract that if he encountered force majeure, the contract could be invalidated. Now he can only follow the principle of voluntariness to see if anyone is willing to leave the legion and go home to farm. The soldiers who followed him in this battle made a lot of money, and the least earned about 500 dinars. Levi is a commander who is very good at making money. In addition, Sulla was very considerate and divided a lot of land. I believe there are still some soldiers willing to farm. After cutting and reducing, 2 months later, Levi finally retained a guard of 3,000 people. Levi decided to train this guard as a seed of officers, just like the German army after the defeat in World War I. Everyone must be able to serve as a centurion in the future. After returning to Capua, Levi immediately called Valens over and asked about the thing he cared about most. How are the war orphans I asked you to adopt? Levi asked. Before leaving for Africa, Levi ordered Valens to adopt a large number of war orphans. If you want to do great things to change the world, then loyalty must be cultivated from a young age. He doesn't want to be assassinated by his own subordinates like Caesar. We have adopted more than 3,200 orphans, all of whom are under 10 years old, and boys account for about 80% of them. Valens said. Very good. How is the school being built? Levi asked. It's all built. Where are the teachers? Basically, they are all equipped. I try to use our veterans. Good job. I will go to check the school tomorrow. Levi said. The school in his mind should be a military school, so the teachers should try to use experienced soldiers. As for ordinary teachers, he is not at ease. What if they teach these people wrongly? There is another thing. I need you to build a monastery near the school. What is a monastery? It is a religious building, a place to train priests. I will tell you what it looks like later. Valens looked at him in confusion. According to his understanding of Levi, even if Levi tried his best to cover it up, Levi's belief in God was very limited. How could he build a monastery in Dragon City? I converted to a religion called the Holy Religion, Levi said with a serious face. Valens was confused. What is the Holy Religion? This is a religion from the Far East, the country that produces silk, Levi said. In this era, silk from China has spread to Rome. Caesar once wore a silk dress that shocked the Romans. After entering the imperial era, Chinese silk entered Rome in large quantities, and the dignitaries of Rome loved it very much. Valens could never understand why Mrs. Levi believed in a religion from the East, although Eastern religions are often more rigorous than Western religions. What is the God of the Holy Church? Panu. He is the God of creation, and the only God in the world, Levi said with a look of godliness. Monotheism is the core content of Catholicism. It is precisely relying on monotheism that Catholicism completely separates its religious beliefs from other religions, set its own gods as the only gods, and the gods of other religions are not gods. Greek and ancient Roman religions are very tolerant religions. They respect the gods of all places and respect each other's religions. Through the expansion of the Greeks and ancient Romans, they incorporated the gods of all places into their own pantheons. Among them, not only did the kings of mortals become gods, but also the gods of all places merged. After Rome entered the imperial era, it established the pantheon and moved the gods of all places into the pantheon. However, Catholicism has always rejected this integration. It is extremely conservative and extremely xenophobic. It is this conservatism and xenophobia that defeated tolerance and integration. Levi understood that this was a historical necessity. No one could stop this trend. All he could do was to follow this trend. So he decided to take the path of Catholicism and leave Catholicism with no way to go. If he wants to be an emperor in the future, he will need the cooperation of religion to control people's thoughts. Although Confucianism is good, it has to face the competition of Greek philosophy. With his current status, he can't make Confucianism mainstream. He doesn't have such a long period of time to wait, so religion is the only choice. And there is only a 1,000-year religion? How can there be a 1,000-year empire? If he becomes the first pope, then his descendants will be descendants of saints, which is the real free meal ticket. Just like the king of Jordan, even if the country is destroyed, it is easy for them to get various benefits by virtue of their status as descendants of saints. Levi felt that he was worried about his descendants, and they should thank him. Levi carefully introduced the Holy Church to Valens and wanted to pull him into the church, but Valens seemed uninterested in these. Levi had to give up. The next day, Levi took some retainers such as Geta to Longcheng School. Geta, do you want to go to Rome to develop? Levi asked. Master, what do you mean? Someone asked. Do you want to be a quaestor, a magistrate, a tribune of the people, etc.? I have a lot of tenants and retainers now. If you want to be one, I can let them choose you, Levi said. Now Levi's strength has been further enhanced. After receiving the land gift from Sulla, Levi took the opportunity of low prices to buy land. Now there is so much land that there are no Roman citizens to farm. According to later records, there are no more than 900,000 citizens in Rome, but Levi estimated that if he recruited all the tenants, he could at least recruit 40,000 tenants to work for him, together with their relatives and friends. This is a very terrible force. He can completely push his people to high positions in Rome. Hearing this, the retainers were surprised and happy. These positions are not only high-ranking and powerful, but also automatically become senators of the Roman Senate after the term of office expires. This is simply too good. Master, are you serious? Geta asked with a look of surprise. Of course, I need to have my own people in the Senate, otherwise it will be inconvenient to do anything, Levi said. In fact, he originally hoped that his retainers would become senators and just serve as his retainers. However, If he did not expand his manpower in Rome, his influence would be greatly restricted. Chapter 174 School and Monastery. But even if you become senators, you have to listen to me. I can make you senators, and I can also destroy you, Levi said. Of course, Geta patted his chest loudly. If anyone dares to be ungrateful, I will be the first to disagree, Belial said excitedly. The retainers said passionately that they all came from poor backgrounds and were overjoyed to be able to become officers. They didn't expect to become senators of the Roman Senate. This was even more magical than pie in the sky. For a moment, they were extremely grateful to Levi. You should study more in the future. To be a senator, you must know how to read. The quaestor must know some financial knowledge, and the magistrate must be proficient in Roman law. Otherwise, how can I let you be the quaestor and the magistrate? Levi said as he walked. The retainers nodded repeatedly. There was nothing wrong with this. If you can't even read, how can you be the quaestor and the magistrate? If you say it out, people will laugh. However, some people were so anxious that they scratched their heads. Did they have to go to school again? When it comes to fighting on the battlefield, everyone is a good hand, but when it comes to studying, it is difficult for them. In the midst of great entanglement, they came to Longcheng School. Due to the scarcity of buildings in Longcheng School occupies a very large area. When entering the school, most of them were in class, and some were doing exercises. Those elementary school students who were doing exercises were training with wooden swords and shields. Because it is a military school, they need to learn various skills such as cues, swordsmanship, javelin, etc. from an early age, which is almost the same as the army. Seeing the sweaty little girl in the queue, Geta asked, "Why are there girls here? Do you expect them to go to the battlefield?" He knew very well the purpose of Levi running this school, which was to train the best soldiers. Since they are soldiers, why do they look for girls? Belial and others also echoed. "I can't see them wandering outside," Levi said. "The master of the family is indeed the kindest person I have ever seen." Geta took the lead in flattering him. "What have you seen? There are many people you haven't seen. He should be the kindest person in the world," Belial said. Geta couldn't help but open his mouth. "Damn, I met an opponent today. Is he going to give up his position as the #1 flatterer?" Others wanted to laugh, but they didn't dare to laugh, so they could only bear it. Levi shook his head. Of course, his purpose was not that simple. These orphans were the people he cared about the most and were his real team in the future. Even Geta and others were a little worse in his heart. He hoped that they could grow up healthily. It is necessary to contact girls when you are young. As the saying goes, a single yang cannot be born, and a single yin cannot grow. With the stimulation of girls, boys will have more desire to perform. There was a big slogan on the playground: "Loyalty to the head of the family is our only duty." Levi's old face was slightly red, and then he quietly gave Valens a thumbs up. The young man understood well and had a future. Seeing Levi and the others coming, the teacher ordered the children to stop training and line up in a neat line. "Long live Levi! Long live Levi!" Those immature little boys and girls raised the Roman military salute and said in unison. Their voices were a little immature, but their faces were very serious. They looked so cute that people couldn't help but want to hug them. Levi returned the salute, then walked up and touched their heads. The children touched by Levi laughed. "Are you living well here?" Levi asked. The children looked at each other and then started talking. "Good, good, not so good." The teachers were immediately embarrassed. Would Levi be angry after hearing this? "What's bad?" Levi asked with a serious face. "Did the teachers abuse them? Dad is dead, and Mom is gone. Mom doesn't want me anymore." The little boys and girls who were serious just now immediately turned into snotty, with big tears flowing down their eyes, and then turned into big clown faces. Looking at the crying babies, Levi was a little at a loss. What should he do? The retainers stared at each other. These children were really annoying. Should we go up and cook them a meal of bamboo shoots and pork, so that they would probably stop crying? Anyway, all the children in their family were educated in this way. Levi comforted them and made a promise to stop them from crying, but they still sobbed. "In the future, we need to strengthen our mental education," Levi thought secretly. "You can call me the principal or the head of the family in the future. Remember, I am both your principal and your head of the family, Levi said with a smile. I know, principal. I know, head of the family. Some children said, if you are bullied, you can find me and I will do justice for you. Oh, the children immediately burst into laughter, but the school staff next to them looked a little embarrassed. With Levi's support, how can they control these children? After leaving here, Levi said, in the future, the school will be managed militarily, including the teachers. We must require the teachers to meet the military standards. We will manage the teachers for life and not let them have any worries, but they must also fulfill their duties. In his previous life, his father was hospitalized in a military hospital, and the attitude of the doctors and nurses there shocked him greatly. He also hoped that his school could reach that level, so he was willing to pay a high salary, and he also hoped that the employees would fulfill their due responsibilities. Oh, Gaeta was a little confused. In fact, he didn't understand what Levi said. Levi sighed. Probably no one in the world could understand him. In the following days, Levi threw himself into the construction of the school. He personally took charge of the school's discipline and became a nanny, which eased the emotions of the children. As for the job of the governor of Campania, it was given to Gaeta, and these jobs were no longer difficult for Gaeta. Then Levi entered a dormant period. With the stabilization of the domestic political situation, his income began to grow again. He kept buying land and then hired Roman citizens to farm it. Coupled with the land that Livius purchased from Sulla, Livius had become a veritable landlord, and his power far surpassed that of Pompey. In the core of Dragon City, a pool exudes a strange smell. It is full of hemp heads, rags, bark and other things, which have been soaked in lime water for more than 100 days. Since coming to Rome, papermaking has always been a dream of Livius. Papyrus is rotten. Compared with paper made of pulp, papyrus is not only inconvenient, but also very easy to break and difficult to preserve. It has so many shortcomings. Now that Livius feels that he has the power to preserve the papermaking technique, he ordered people to prepare these a long time ago. Thank you very much for the reward from Guanzizai under the body tree. Chapter 175 True God Paper. This process is called degumming, which makes the raw materials fibrous. Some slaves have already fished them out, then washed, shredded, and pounded them. The fibers are broomed, and this step has already turned into paper pulp. Then it is infiltrated into water to become slurry, and then the pulp is scooped with a water-soaked paper scoop, bamboo mat, so that the pulp is interwoven into thin sheets of wet paper on the paper scoop. At the beginning, these slaves were not skilled, and they made them either too thin or too thick. One by one, the yellowed papers were pasted on the bluestone. As the weather warmed up, it didn't take long for these papers to be dried. No matter how the papermaking technique changes, it is always inseparable from these four processes. The slaves happily handed the yellowed paper to Levi, and then looked at him with admiration. These slaves are the ones who know Levi's skills best: making sugar, making spirits, making steel swords, large glass and papermaking. There is nothing he can't do. These are all revelations from the true God. I learned these things because I received the teachings from the true God in my dream, Levi said with a charlatan look. Now he is the only prophet of the Holy Church, and also the last one. There will never be a prophet in the Holy Church in the future. Of course, he is also the one with the most power in the Holy Church. The faces of those slaves were filled with awe. Could this be true? Could it be that only Pangu is the true God? Levi ignored them, took some papers and left here, and then went to a small monastery that had been completed. Due to the rush of time, the scale of this monastery is not large, covering only about 500 square meters. Levi did not want to turn Longcheng into a religious holy place. He planned to spend a huge amount of money to build a majestic church in Capua, which should be the religious center of Rome. Right here, a kind-looking old man was waiting for him. He was old Aeneas, Aeneas's father. Since learning about the Holy Church, old Aeneas was the first to apply to join the church and became the dean of this monastery to help Levi train priests. Prophet, is this the paper you mentioned? Touching the papers, old Aeneas said in surprise. No, this is not paper. This is the true God paper. This is the paper given to us by the true God, Levi said with a serious face. Old Aeneas immediately looked solemn, and then made a cross on his chest in a very mysterious way. "That's right, everything is the gift of the true God." Levi secretly nodded a thumbs up. This teen seems to be quite qualified. Levi asked him to try this true God paper, and after using it, old Aeneas found that the effect was indeed good. Moreover, this kind of paper can be folded however you want, without worrying about the risk of breaking, and it is many times stronger than papyrus. "Are we going to copy our holy book with this kind of paper?" old Aeneas said excitedly. "Copying? No, this is too low level. The true God told me that the holy book should be printed, and it is movable type printing." Levi shook his head and said, "What is printing?" old Aeneas said with a confused face. He found that what Levi said was too profound, which made him completely unable to keep up with the pace. "The true God taught me the technology in my dream. May the true God bless me," Levi said. Old Aeneas was getting more and more confused. He was the abbot of the monastery, so why didn't the true God teach him? "Is there really a true God in this world?" old Aeneas asked. "Of course there is. Everything I do, including sugar making, wine making, paper making, and glass improvement, is all taught by the true God. He is the only God in the world. He is kind, omniscient and omnipotent," Levi said very devoutly. "If you can't get the guidance of the true God, it can only prove that you are not devout enough." "Am I not devout enough?" old Aeneas thought doubtfully. "It is true. If I become a fanatic, can I get the guidance of the true God and make a fortune like the owner of the family?" Old Aeneas' eyes immediately lit up, and then he said very devoutly, "May the true God forgive my sins. From now on, I will serve the true God wholeheartedly." Levi's mouth twitched slightly. "It seems that only money can defeat the gods. When will the printing technology be completed?" old Aeneas asked. "1 month. In the next 2 years we have to train missionaries. We need them to preach," Levi said. "Okay. Does the true God have any special instructions for preaching?" asked old Aeneas. Levi was silent for a while, and then said a sentence that was regarded as a classic by later believers. "Encircle the city with the countryside. This is the path taken by the Catholic Church to occupy Rome in the future, and it is also the path taken by a certain country to seize power in the future. And it is also the route taken by Christianity to attack China in the future. So there is nothing new in the world, and you can basically find it by flipping through history. Time flies, and 3 years have passed in a blink of an eye." In a village near Praenest, Memmius was cutting some fences. Since Levi divided the land for them, he also got a large piece of land. He and many of his comrades were assigned here, occupying the land that originally belonged to the Samnites. Because he made a lot of money in Africa, his family added 2 slaves, plus he had a wife and 3 children, and his life was very good. Holding these fences, he walked towards his home. Along the way, there were children laughing and playing from time to time, and there was a peaceful scene everywhere. At this time, a young man in a black robe came out from next door to his house. His friend Rufus held the young man's hand and looked very grateful. Rufus was his comrade in arms. Because his arm was pierced by a spear in a battle, the arm was a little unsteady. Fortunately, there were slaves to farm, so life was still acceptable. The identity of the young man in black robe was very special. A year ago, Levi funded the construction of a church and school in their village. The young man in black robe, Lungus, was both the priest of this church and the principal of that school. In order to quickly promote the holy religion, Levi decided to take the dual route of church and school, and everything should be started from the baby. The Romans respected the religions of all nations very much, so there was no wave in this village. After Lungus came here, he was very enthusiastic to help those lonely old people, and gave the villagers some gifts from time to time. Many villagers had a great liking for him. In addition, he was the principal of the only primary school in the village. Many elderly people and poor villagers converted to the so-called holy religion. Lungus said goodbye to Rufus and happened to find Memmius. "Hello, Memmius." Lungus greeted him very warmly. "Hello, respected priest." Memmius said respectfully. He respected the clergy very much, even if he did not believe in the so-called true God. "We have a meeting in the church tomorrow. Do you want to come?" Lungus asked. "I'm sorry, I have something else to do tomorrow." Memmius said, "That's a pity. I welcome you anytime." Lungus said with regret. Back home, his wife Fabia was cooking, End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.